Good morning and good evening, stateside. Yes, we're back. I'm back from the YouTube gulag. So I've been released on parole for 4 years, I think, due to the new administration in the US. Maybe they're scared, potentially. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just considering their options. I don't know. But what I have noticed is not only has the strike gone, but also the initial warning that I got years ago. I don't think that is coincidence. I think they're worried. I think they are concerned. You've probably noticed one of the young global leaders of the WEF, Mark Zuckerberg, who's recently basically become more anti, with a small anti, censorship. Surprise, surprise. He's worried as well. There's a few of them that are worried out there. I wonder why. Yes. So, yes, I'm out of the gulag. The chains have been broken, and I've been let free to a minor extent. So don't get carried away, you lot. Remember, they're still monitoring. They've still got the overlords have still got their AIs keeping an eye on us. So nothing's really changed, and they may be vengeful in the future. Keep that in mind. So I have to be a bit tactful, as I've been told. The bald man from New Zealand has reminded me that I'm not as tactful. I'm too forward, and I get myself into constant trouble. He's probably right, but then again, I take advice from Ted, not from Bart. So, and Ted tells me just go for it. So I blame Ted in a sort of funny way. You've got to blame someone. You can't take responsibility in this world. It'll hurt your feelings. Apparently, it hurt my feelings. So I have to blame someone else because that's the modern way of dealing with your problems. Blame someone else. How is everyone? You missed me? I hope you did. At least a bit. You know, I'll try and keep things colourful a bit. Okay, Deborah. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that your gallbladder is doing much better and happier. Yes. Yes, nothing like getting a bit of relief from a poorly functioning gallbladder. It does really mess up downstream a lot of things and makes things a bit all over the place. So, yeah, I've had a number of people that their prime reason was gallbladder issues, and they're back to normal and things are really good. Obviously, there are other people that have got they may have issues with their pancreas. They may have issues with, I mean, if you've got damage to your islet cells, you may not be producing enough enzymes. So you may need a bit of support and then I megadose those people on taurine. But first fix the gallbladder, then megadose so we don't get, diarrhea and all sorts of other issues and just put them on for a temporary time on enzymes, then slowly reduce the sort of enzymes and kick them on to taurine at high doses, slowly building up their tolerance and using it to repair some of the oxidative damage. Remember, taurine is produced in the pancreas, and taurine is a thing that is required in large amounts in that tissue specifically. And this is another reason why diabetics and people like that do much better when you supplement them with taurine. Clearly, for the reason that they've caused themselves a lot of distress in that regard. Nice. Adjust it so without distorting, because it does have a tendency of distorting. Well, anyway, as long as you can see me and hear me, that's the main thing. Anyway, yeah. Dragon, how are you? Morning, Harry. What do you think of the social media ban? Well, I just mentioned what I thought about mine. Um, so, yes, but are you talking about in Australia Yes, the censors, yes, very excited about controlling what Australians hear and what Australians say. Yes, yes, very, very, our lovely overlords in Canberra, lovely people, absolutely lovely people. Yes, they believe that we are little children and we need to be protected and we need to be told what to say, what to do, how to sleep, how to live, basically everything, you know. And I can understand it. We are children after all. Children of Albo's great utopian socialist republic. Yes. Comrade Albo, go, mate, go. Yes. And eventually I'm waiting for my digital chip as, for instance, Tracy reminded me. Yes, really looking forward to have that plugged up one of my orifices. Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, lovely man, absolutely lovely man. Just as crazy as the other one in Victoria. Johnny, always good to see you, mate. Didn't your mother love you? MPIKMS 72. Are you a drone? Are you classified? Do you identify as a drone? Wow, Harry's back. Awesome. Was that your surname? Bloody hell. God, would have been wicked at school. God. That's I know. That's your new ID, government ID. It's been placed on your forehead. So, how are you? Gary, how are you, mate? Long time no see or hear or whatever. Yeah, I need to basically get the Zoom things up. I know Richard and Paul, the south of here. Oh, there's Richard. Speak of the devil from New Zealand. Yes, as we call him, the technical Kiwi. He's a very technical person. Oh, yes, yes, yes. The chains will be broken, Tracy, for now. Stefan, how are you, mate? Harry, greetings from Panama. You're down in Panama, where I fled the European winter this time. Okay, so you went to Panama. Ah, good for you. I hope you're enjoying yourself. G'day, Lukey. Hello, everyone. Just got home. Okay. I'll send you an email if you feel like it. If you don't, there's always going to be other live streams. So, Ed Tracy, uh, digital ID. We will see me off the SN. Really? I heard you're building a bunker to protect yourself. Oh, and here's Paul. G'day, Paul. Oh, here beef is cheap and probably grass fed. Well, down in the Costa Rica, which is not too far away from there, Nagoya Peninsula, the so-called blue zone. They are cowboys. It is arid, the environment there, and primarily before roads turned up and the carbs turned up in that area, they used to be pastoral, apparently. But nowadays, we ignore that because most people go to the tourist location and go, oh, there's plenty of carbs here. Oh, yeah, the road brought them in. Just letting you know. Yes. Yeah, look, refrigeration in many parts of South America, still refrigeration is an issue, and also electricity. So there's, the sort of electrical grids, and that has an effect on being able to have a lot of perishable items, as they're called, in places. That's another reason why a lot of processed food, traditionally they had their own ways of sort of curing things or basically fermenting things, and that's how they preserve those sort of food items. Cheeses and stuff like that are more prevalent because they can last out of the fridge, certain varieties. But when it comes to a lot of perishable stuff, yeah, there's still a lot of seasonality in some of those countries for that exact reason. PC, waiting to live. G'day, Harry. Good to see you, mate. And Ricardo, how are you, mate? From Kiwi land. Multiple comments. She's spamming the actual chat thing. Jay Ducky, how are you, mate? Thanks for sharing a few of my videos on your channel as well. So appreciate it. So people across the ditch will be using lots of VPN then, apparently. Don't tell Albo, our great illustrious comrade Albo. Do not tell him. Anthony Albanese, if people want to know, that's our Prime Minister. He's got a nickname called Albo. So, yeah. I've got a few other nicknames I could use for him, but apparently there is now a new little button you have to tick on the YouTube thing, which actually says you're not going to say anything about certain people. You're not going to misrepresent them or anything like that. So I have to basically use this style of chatting so we don't have the live stream affected. Let's put it that way. Mm. So, as I said, some things improve, some things get worse. So I had the strike removed and the old warning from years ago when I first started the channel that I got a warning. That's gone as well. So it's stripped back to like it's brand new channel nearly, without any restrictions and all that. But I just think that's the current political situation in the US. So that won't last. I'm realistic about that. And then you've got our little supreme leaders, Albo, John Un, that would like to basically send us to re-education camps and would like to basically guarantee that the rest of us have our tongues controlled. Yes, yes. And you thought having Ted around was bad in terms of censorship. You haven't seen Albo in full flight. Anyway, I might need to educate myself on VPN. Virtual private network, my dear. Virtual private network. Make sure you get one which is an international one, which is not regulated by the Australian government and monitored by the Australian Signals Directorate, which is that like the NSA in America, we've got the Australian Signals Directorate that actually monitors our communications. Just reminding you, Tracy. So yes, you will really have to brush up on your IT. What's melatonin supplements? Where's the Q, J Ducky? Where is the Q? Ask questions with a Q, or otherwise I'll send Ted around to spank you, and he'll enjoy that. So just be aware of that. Will melatonin supplementations affect long-term endogenous melatonin production? There is anecdotal evidence that it does cause some level of derangements. If you get off them for a certain length of time and you keep inflammation down in your system, things can recover in that regard, but it's not something we advise. We advise things like blue blocking glasses, like Oh, where's the other one? Oh, inside in the other room. So I've got these for the early evening, and I've got the other ones in there that have got more red in them for the later evening, so after 9. And because we're in, it's called, yeah, so these I usually will be wearing at about 6 o'clock with the Eurasia live stream. So that's one thing to improve melatonin. Having a bit extra taurine in the evening amplifies melatonin, increases it. And, some blue light hygiene at night, adjusting my monitor as it washes out in the evening. You saw me on the geopolitics one on the other channel, the Harry Serpanos Opinions. So it's just, I'm going to protect my circadian rhythms and my melatonin production at night. And if people complain, basically, that's my opinion to that. It's not basically, does Harry look photogenic? I don't care. It's the information that counts more than that sort of nonsense. That's for big channels that are basically all self-importance. It's more image than content. Content is far more important. Just covering that point. But yeah, not a good idea. I wouldn't do it. There are other ways of actually boosting melatonin. So taurine and blue blocking technology. Our countries seem to copy each other. So, well, you started it with Lucinda, you started with that other crazy, you know what? I could classify her in a number of ways, but I would say the WEF protege for New Zealand. I blame you, Kiwis, for starting all this. As I said, you're not supposed to. My feelings are important, remember? DEI policy says my feelings are important. And so, Richard, because my feelings are important, I can blame the Kiwis first and not us Australians because my feelings are important. I can't take responsibility for anything. And my dear friend Larry Finn at BlackRock would agree with me completely. Lovely man, absolutely lovely man, just, did another contract, buying up more of whatever's left of Ukraine, the rubbles, lovely man. He's going to make a few pods, billions and billions of, dosh out of that conflict. But, his heart's in the right place. Again, a man that balances his feelings and his money. Okay, Stephanus, cancer cells hide behind antioxidants. Can't remember anyone anymore who said that. You were going so long. You were gone so long. Yeah, I did say something about in regards to antioxidants not being a good idea. There's two. Now, when it comes to cancer cells, antioxidants can actually help reduce stress, oxidative stress. Remember, when you do cancer therapy, you're increasing oxidative stress, localized, trying to kill off the cancer cells, put them under too much stress, energy deprivation and stress. So oxidative stress beyond a certain point can be detrimental to cancer cells. So antioxidants are considered a no-no. So that's one thing. On the other side, evidence has shown quite clearly that we do much better with less antioxidants. Your own, when you exercise, your own cellular cells have that slight hormesis and they actually respond much better. When you take antioxidants, it blunts, the sort of reparative effects of post-exercise, the sort of repair. So not a good thing. So it's a bit of a bad idea to use antioxidants, exogenous antioxidants, stuff that comes from the outside supplement. Endogenous antioxidants, they are regulated tightly by the body and provided depending on the tissue type, how much and what's required. So it's best to upregulate those with good animal nutrition, which does it, than artificially throwing things in and deranging the intracellular systems that are basically there to do their job. Glutathione will recycle vitamin E and vitamin C, so the small amount that we get will get recycled. Too much, in terms of vitamin C in particular, becomes a pro sort of quasi-pro-oxidant via, in particular via oxalate production. So if you've got high oxidative stress, you may use more of it. If you have less on a carnivore diet, you most likely be producing a lot of oxalate for no good reason. So not a good thing. And so that's an important thing. But also there is long-term mammalian studies, so from animal models, that show that when you use antioxidants, your lifespan reduces. The only time it actually improves is at over 70. And what happens over 70, equivalent to humans, that is, for rats and for chimps and many of these other animals that they've done the experiments on, it's been quite clear, is that at that point, there is a more precipitous decline in intracellular antioxidant systems, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase, those sort of things start declining. So at that point, antioxidants actually have a benefit for older people. So when they've actually put the antioxidants in these older rats, they actually achieve a good outcome, as good as the ones who may have still maintaining some level of due to genetics, intracellular antioxidant systems. So they pretty much come together at the end of life. So cause mortality in terms of at end of life, actually the differences between the two groups shrinks. So it shows quite clearly that they have a benefit close to end of life rather than within life. So if you're going to use them, if you're over 70, and especially if you've got far more health issues and stuff like that, they could be useful, is what the animal models are saying. Do we have any human trials? No, because we haven't locked up people in labs for their whole life, twins, to see what happens. So we don't know. But if it works in most mammalian sort of tissue, we sort of extrapolate from that. It's likely to work in a similar way. That's all we can say at this point. You don't like it? Oh, Albo? How dare you, Tracy? How dare you? G'day, Shelley. Hello, Harry. And chat room. A few fans here. Yes, which is on the warpath. She needs a VP. She needs a VPN. Yes. Where's the queue for questions? God almighty, you guys. Tregan. Okay, Harry, what are your thoughts on private currencies such as Monero or even Bitcoin? Bitcoin isn't really private. I don't give financial advice, guys. I do not give financial advice. I'm not against Bitcoin, and I'm not against gold, and I'm not against silver. These things seem to hold their value. In particular, gold and silver will hold their value, even if there is an electromagnetic pulse that takes out all the grid. Bitcoin will be taken out, and all the other Bitcoin currencies or whatever, gold and silver will still be in circulation and can be used for exchange. You revert to a barter economy under those sort of circumstances. So anybody that's actually got commodities can trade and survive as long as they've got enough guns to protect those commodities, so to speak. But, if things go to shit, gold and silver and other commodities will be your savior, and guns to protect them. in terms of if the grid, the system doesn't go down, so to speak. Yeah, they have a place. There's a lot of young people and a lot of even some middle-aged people that are, into Bitcoin and into those sort of things. So that does mean that there is a demand. And as long as there is a demand for something, it should hold in terms of, and also because people view it as a way of uh, security against debasement of currency. So in a society where there's a lot of money printing, it makes sense to have access to things that are not being debased, that are holding their store of value. So you can actually use them as a means of exchange to get services, goods and services, so to speak. So yes, on that sort of side, but um, it's also because it's a speculative. Remember, it's not underwritten by anything. It's a bit like a fiat currency. It's sort of that people have trust in it, like a fiat currency. People lose trust in it and go to zero. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is going to go to zero. I don't think it will, because there's a lot of people that have interest in it, have invested in it, see it as a way of protecting um, assets. And as long as people are in it, there's demand for it. Like anything that's got demand, it holds its value and increases over time in comparison to something which is increasing in supply, fiat money, and being debased and losing its value. So against fiat currency, it will hold very well. But is it also very volatile? Yes, it is. All of these sort of instruments are very, very volatile. Now, they're not as risky as ETFs. ETFs can really just bowl because they're more like a tradition, similar to derivatives. They can go to shit, especially if the companies that hold them also implode and implode with all their holdings as well, and the funds under management also implode with that organisation. So there are risks with everything. Um, that's why I say I don't give any advice, financial advice. I do my own research, my own work, but I stay out of that area because it's highly prone to litigation, as you can understand. And at my age, getting close to retirement, because I'm 58, getting very close to retirement, I do not want to be litigated against, because you may say something and people go and do a completely other thing, or they will stay. I've told people to, invest in this, and then I've sold out and out of a pharmaceutical company. I've made money, like doubled or tripled my money, and I've told them to get out, and they go, "Oh, I can make more," and then they lose, and then they complain that it tanked because the FDA basically didn't approve the damn drug in the end, even though it was showing a lot of promise. Well, that's not my fault. I told you to get out. You know what? You made a packet of money, get out. So that's why I don't do it at all. And that's why, because yes, you don't get any joy out of that, but complaints. So I stay clear of that completely. There are people who are actually have got a license to practice to give advice of that sort, and I would say go to people like that. And I would research. If you're going to use anybody for any sort of information, go out there and ask questions. Well, it's 11 o'clock. I can actually drink my coffee. Hmm. Anyway, let's move on. A few struggles, but some improvements. A lot of complaining. Have you? Oh, a queue. Thank you, Stefan. Have you ever looked into NAC? Yep. Eye drops against cataracts. Um, they seem to have some positive effect for some people have claimed. I haven't really seen any like long-term studies to convince me either way, but they don't seem to be causing any problems for people. And some people have anecdotal evidence that, especially a lot of naturopaths claim that there's some improvements for people. So, but I haven't really looked into it in any deep and meaningful way. So I can't give you like a definitive because even the research is very convoluted and very limited. Yeah. So, Sarah, great to see you. Thanks for turning up. Hold on, finger. Oh, I have to bring it further out the finger so it actually picks it up. Yeah, those ones. The Roy glasses, I stepped on them, Tracy. I stepped on them. Now I've got all these other there. I busted them. That's why I had to basically go and get another two pairs, which cost me nearly $300. This one and the other one. I said I might as well get ones for the later evening. Um, yeah, I accidentally dropped them as I was yeah, in the kitchen and sort of I stepped on them. Oops. So yes, they're busted. Plastic, so one of the anyway, shit happens. So no Roy glasses for you anymore. So the Roy type, because I couldn't actually find the same ones. They've withdrawn some of the actual brands. So they've got these ones, they've got the metal ones. Um, they've got some that look a bit, but not exactly like those. Those Roy glasses were quite nice. But yeah, anyway, if I do find another pair or they bring back the same, I'll take a look again and make grab just for you in that regard. But no, shit happens. Jonathan, good to have you here, mate. Must be late in the You guys are about 11 hours, so it's 12 o'clock midnight, mate. 12 o'clock midnight. Thanks for turning up to say hello. Because we're 11 hours difference between the London or the UK and Tasmania. Because we're in daylight savings now, so they went out 1 hour back. We went 1 hour forward. Yeah, so you know what I mean. Little adjustment. I did update the description, so it is there. And if people look under the description, you'll see the other channels that so I've updated all that sort of stuff. Thank God. Thanks, Stefan. So, yeah, but yeah, it's happening in that regard, dude. So you've got an acknowledgement there. Let me just go down to. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now I have to find my other location again. So I forget the Polish name for it. Oops. Where are we? Can't really tell you. I haven't really looked into it. So, yep, it seems to work for a number of people. Um, but I haven't really looked at the literature. It's sort of just what I've heard. So when it comes to a lot of pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, I occasionally look into them, especially if they're like big things like statins or things like that. But when it's things which are sort of minor things, or whether they're supplemental or drugs, whatever they are, or nutraceuticals or stuff like that, some of the stuff that I've got interest in, I'll look into. Some of the stuff that I've got less interest, I probably won't look into. Um, so this is one of those things I'll probably won't bother in that regard. But so I can't really, I don't like giving an opinion on things that I don't know enough about. I've either researched it to the nth degree and I'm certain I can give you the absolute definitive opinion on it. And if I can't do that, I won't give you an opinion because, not that I don't think you'll hold it against me in that regard. No, it's just I don't think it's genuine, and I don't think just for the hell of it. If I don't know about something, I don't know. You know, it's just is what it is. You need to be honest about that. It's yeah. So leave it at that. I must be aging backwards at 58. I did cut my hair. You can actually see the back of my hair. You see, it's so which is really good and a bit thicker as well. I just, I cut my hair all the way back to nothing. I'm like literally like a baldy type thing, and it's grown back quite well again. And but the white thing up there is still there, but it's the photo bleaching. I can't get away from it. It could be worse. I could be like my sisters who went completely lily white in their 30s, in their mid 30s. So genetics. It takes a number of generations to reverse certain genetics. Just is what it is. I'm just lucky I don't have alopecia anymore or baldness because I was getting baldness through there and alopecia in the back. I had like the sort of friar tuck thing growing in the back. That was on the carb diet, obviously, the sad diet. But yeah, actually, carnivore's diet. The more protein I've put in, and also sulfurs, the better my hair. It's really been good. I've been able to push against my genetics in that regard, so I'm happy about that. But with the photo bleaching, it's not like graying because it's not grey. You can see it's white. It's actual white. There's a difference between you. You can actually see there's a bit of greyness here. That's not the same, but that is white. You know, that's completely white. It's a different thing. It's called photo bleaching. Um, and I can't do that's genetic. I can't do anything about that. It is what it is. But yes, otherwise, yes, thank you. I'm holding my own to some extent. Um, but yeah, the skin's pretty tight, as you can see. It bounces back pretty firm and all that. A lot of elasticity in that sort of stuff, and I didn't want to do this, but anyway, you can see you can't, like severe wrinkling around, see, even at 58. I used to have quite a lot of wrinkles back in my 40s when I was on a sad diet, obviously, but now a lot of that wrinkling has gone away. The skin is firmer and tighter, and all that. So obviously, the carnivore diet is and reducing oxidative stress in that regard. Probably a bit of niacin now and then because that turns into nicotinamide, and that actually also helps with improving your skin functioning and all that. So, and also because I get a lot from piggy. I eat a lot of pig pork. So pork and lamb are my two major meats, and they provide a lot of the sort of nutrients that I require, which is great. I actually got myself a whole lot from Western Australia, uh, a 1 kilogram bag, I know, of pork rind, and it's really high protein. This one because they cut off as they cut it. They some of the flesh, a lot of the skin is attached. So when it's created, these pork rinds have got quite a lot of protein. So per 100 grams, which is 3.53 ounces, it's like 65.6 grams of protein. It's just fantastic. And they are nice, slightly addictive. So I have to control myself. I have to weigh them to 50 grams and I go, no more, stop, Harry. So I have to control myself. So, yes, thank you. I do appreciate that. Thanks, Shelley. The horse. Okay. Yes, I'm an adorable donkey, apparently, compared to one of my nieces. Little, little nut. Bad little girl. Let's put it that way. Mm. Sounds like your feelings are in, important. Hello. Mm. Exactly. That's what I said earlier. Imported from the other side of Tassie, the other side of the pond. We call the in-between water between New Zealand and Australia the pond, across the pond. Just for those in the stateside who don't know what I'm talking about with Richard. Tasmanians, proof Kiwi can swim. Tracy. Thoughts on fulvic acid? Yeah, I've used it before myself uh, in the past. I wouldn't say it's a panacea um, in that regard. So, but people sort of transitioning from a poor diet and stuff like that, things like this can be useful. Different products that have got different trace minerals. Um, there are a whole lot of, I usually recommend also with more crustaceans and depending on if somebody was ex-vegan or whatever, how depleted they are. So a lot of things can be helpful for people sort of in their transition journey. And it depends on the person. And I do specifically ask for people for their background because there may be some genetic implications. So there are population groups that do better with certain things than other things. So I always ask those. I'm also nuanced, but um, and when you say thoughts on, in what regards do you mean? Sometimes it's adding a bit more context and explaining how you've used it and stuff like that. They'd be able to give me a bit more information for me to sort of respond to how it's interacted with your body as well. So, but in general, not a real issue. I haven't heard it causing any problems for anyone out there. Sammy's here as well. Okay, Sammy, from the UAE. Good to see you, mate. Is vitamin C from lemons a good alternative to milk this from helping with biocomposition by boosting glutathione levels? Look, it can be useful slightly, but I would still recommend if we're dealing with gallbladder issues, I still recommend milk thistle. It depends on, um, but you're not going to get any harm from a bit of lemon juice. You're also going to get a bit of citrate, which can be useful for the mitochondria. So, but it's not going to be any panacea. The majority of times I usually recommend lemon juices, mostly for when people have got oxalate issues. Uh, Now, because some people, I used to, because people couldn't actually handle oxalate dumping and wanted some support or couldn't actually take things like citric acid sort of supplements, because it's just too hard. I have found a brand now that actually puts it in a capsule, so you don't have to basically get it in a powder, which is really hard for many people to consume. Let's put it that way. So if anybody needs a link to that, I may just stick it in the description notes. I'll make a little short video and just put a link to it. That's probably the easiest way. Anyway, I'll leave that. But glutathione, you require a number of the sulfurs, which are important, like cysteine. Plus, you also require things like selenium. So taking lemon juice isn't going to really, if you're missing the other cofactors as well. So, but if you're on a carnivore diet, you should be, especially if you're eating some eggs and stuff like that, should be getting enough selenium, should be getting enough of the sulfurs, enough of these to basically produce what you need, and you don't really need lemon juice in that regard. But if you need to use it for other things, yeah. So, and milk thistle has got its place for things are not functioning well. If, on the other hand, I would rather people use TUDCA in order, which is a sort of a conjugation which includes taurine as well in it, but it's not like free-form taurine, it's a conjugation. So it's a different type of molecule that can actually improve gallbladder function and bile flow and stuff like that. So that would be a better way to go rather than the lemon juice if you're trying to sort out if you look at the first comment that Deborah talked about, because she applied my protocol, the gallbladder protocol, TUDCA, choline, milk thistle. It works, was Deborah's scream. So, because I'm not really sure what you're trying to use it for. It's a bit... okay, sclerosis, it's benign, but preventive approach I have considered having her get on thistle, therapeutic dose of taurine and DDW. Yep, good idea. All that. Make sure she's using the milk thistle at night, 9 o'clock. It's a fat soluble polyphenol, so you need to basically be away from food, but use something like cream that's a fat soluble, and you want to have it and also taurine will help with the fibrotic sort of side of things. But you want to amplify. So you want to take at least 4 grams, and you don't want to do it every day, 3 days a week at max. Okay, because it does have a slight interference with mTOR. That means your protein synthesis. So you don't want to interfere with that too much. So it's sort of a 3-day on, 4 days off, then 3 days on type thing when you're doing that. So just keep that in mind with Fisetin. Do you know nano encapsulated? I've heard about it, but I haven't looked into it. Protein-bound astaxanthin. Astaxanthin looks very promising. I've basically recommended astaxanthin in the past, especially when you go on holidays, because you don't know what the food supply is. It's it's a really strong electron donor, so antioxidant. I'm trying to remember the brand now. Can't remember the brand. There's a brand that's made from sort of the crustaceans and all that, and the astaxanthin that tends to be more stable. What they're trying to do with this process is actually bind it to basically be more stable. But as I've said, I haven't looked into the research like third-party testing. They'd have to provide you with third-party testing that it's stable, that the astaxanthin hasn't been degraded in any way, rancidity, sometimes put into with oils. Bad idea. Oils become rancid and they damage the astaxanthin. Doesn't work. So you sort of have to get a proper brand. You sort of have to look into it. But third-party testing is very important, especially with products like this. But we don't need this at all if you're on a carnivore diet, HD. This is more something that I usually have recommended to some people who may be going on holidays and maybe, potentially coming into contact with things like rancid oils, seed oils, to sort of reduce the oxidative damage that they will incur from the foods that are cooked in those things. So, but for regular people that are on a carnivore diet, you don't need it at all in that regard. So don't waste your money. But I think this process is trying to stabilize the astaxanthin so it doesn't, to reduce degradation, is what they're doing. But as I said, I don't know enough about their process, and different companies have different processes, so you have to investigate the process before you buy the product to make sure that the company's doing the right thing, because they may not be in some cases. And then, you're could work against you in a sense. Anyway, there was something else I'm trying to remember now. Yeah. Look, if you're interested in products, there is a product, but I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. I'm just trying to remember, but I just can't. It's a long time ago since it'll be somewhere that I've written it down or stored it, whatever. Leave a comment if you need it for some reason, and I'll try and find out what it was. Simply Human. How are you? Imputable X factor. Was asking about Monero because in Australia they're removing ATMs. Bitcoin just overtook silver market cap. By the way, yep, I'm aware of that. But again, as I said, I cannot give advice what people should or shouldn't do. Like a lot of people in America, I know, are actually buying like a lot of old silver coins, but that market has actually taken off to such an extent that now the values are, way above what the silver price is. So I'm going, what? And from, like in Australia, from the Perth Mint, you can directly from the Perth Mint buy silver coins that have got high silver content, much closer to market prices, because the price is controlled and regulated by the government, which means that they're much closer to market prices. Far better to buy those than go and buy coins, because you're buying coins, but you're buying them close to the market value, rather than these inflated prices that you're getting from old silver coins that some people are. So that's another kettle of fish. But as I said, I can't give advice to people where they put their money and invest their money. There are a lot of options out there. As I said, there are crypto coins, there are precious metals. Take your pick. I would say have a variety. It would be a sensible thing to do, but that's not financial advice. Let me make that quite clear. Thanks, Tracy. She's gone anyway. Yep, I think we covered that. I keep seeing carnivore groups dumping on dairy. Well, I ignore most of these people now, especially since I do so well on it. Just listen to Harry, keep up with my keto milk cream. As I said, if you're doing well on something and it's not affecting you, and you've got genetics, pastoral genes. I know that Richard has got some of those pastoral genes, like myself. There's um, that makes a big difference. When you take out dairy, you don't do as well. I don't do as well. So I understand where you're coming from. Where other people can take out dairy, it doesn't affect them at all. And some of them even do better. So there is genetic differences. Let's just accept that and not get too wound up about the whole idea. Glutathione, any glutathione supplement, any, usually degrades. It's really, really hard to put glutathione in a bottle in any form. It's one of those very unstable type molecules. And so when people have tested glutathione supplements, they really see poor sort of, and actually increasing glutathione above base level isn't a good thing anyway. The body knows exactly where to put the level of intracellular antioxidants. As I said, I don't like exogenous external antioxidants. Support the body with the right nutrition, as long as you're getting the sulfur amino acids, which are very important. That means more, from protein, which is required. In particular, like things like cysteine, glycine, these sort of things are required for the production of glutathione. Minerals like selenium are very important. Remember, you've also got competition with selenium with your thyroid. But if you're eating eggs are fantastic. Just one egg nearly gives you the RDI. So, so eggs, animal foods tend to be higher in selenium. Crustaceans, quite a lot. So you need to give the body the nutrients it needs, and it will produce the glutathione you require in that regard. So, and will synthesize. There are some glutathione formulations which are liposomal. They seem to be much more stable compared to some of the other supplements. But again, it depends on the company, the production methods. When it comes to supplements, production methods are important. It's like taurine. You've got to go for free form, and it has to come from North America or Germany. Why? Because their production methods are the best, and they get less, contaminants, less problems in the production process. But taurine is one of those things which is, even in its free form, it's not too. You're not going to. It's not going to degrade. You can keep it stored away for ages. It's a different sort of kettle of fish. But when it comes to things like glutathione, which are molecules that are less stable, yeah, stay away from them. And as I said, I don't like putting in things which the body produces, and the body knows how to regulate properly your intracellular antioxidant system. Pushing it and deranging it for any reason is not a good thing. It's like a lot of these supplements, what are they? For people on SAD diet, they've got oxidative stress, and they go, have a glutathione pill. Well, why don't you get off your oxidative stressing diet, and then you don't need this sort of stuff. So that's the market that these are produced for. All the vitamin C's and all that is produced for the high carb, SAD dieter market, or the veganerized market, people that are under eating animal foods and so can't produce enough of these intracellular antioxidants. As a consequence, they're forced to use a lot of this supplementation. which have got a lot of problems sometimes in production, especially the cheaper stuff, can end up because of the degraded material in those to be a pro-oxidant, obviously because it's a small quantity, it's not going to be a lot, but can upset the stomach and all that, so yeah, there's always crazes. There's like the hydrogen craze, hydrogen infusing water, another craze. And it actually creates a lot of, let's say, digestive issues that people ignore, but it does create digestive issues, let alone a whole lot of other derangements, headaches and nausea and all sorts of things to people. That's why I don't recommend those sort of things. Plus it increases just slightly. I think it's about in the ratio about 0.7 of the parts per million in deuterium. It's not a lot, but the overall quantity is higher compared to standard water because you're infusing in. So, yes, it's another kettle of fish. It's just crazy the snake oil products that people are selling out there for people. Just eat meat, dairy if you can tolerate, some seafood, some variety, to get your nutrients. There's plenty of it in animal foods. Thanks, Ron. Yes, it's good to be back. It definitely is good to be back. Floaters. Yeah, look, floaters can originate in your eyes for a whole lot of different reasons. It can be due to sort of cataract issues, eye surgery that's gone wrong. Joe the Flyboy. Yep, you're welcome, mate. So surgery that's gone wrong can be another one. Oxidative stress in the eye can also be an issue. I know taurine can actually reduce fibrosis in the eye, can reduce oxidative stress. It does help in that regard. There are certain saline solutions that can also reduce the type of sort of dryness of the eye and all that. That can also seem to amplify the effect. There is also some preventative methods with lasers that I've heard as well, but it's not something that I know, but it's not something that I've actually researched extensively. I just usually have seen people take taurine and seen a reduction in eye floaters. And I do mention that because I've had now about 5 or 6 anecdotes in relation to taurine. But the jury's out on a lot of the other therapies and methods in that regard. Also, being on a carnivore diet seems to improve things as well for a lot of people. Again, anecdotes, because we don't have research. We haven't researched people on specific diets or specific supplements. There's a lot of anecdotes out there. You can Google and you'll find all these anecdotes. I say to people, try them. And if they work, fantastic. If they don't, bad luck is the sort of way of seeing it. But, is what it is. You see on Billyberry. Okay. Apology human, but not sure. Well, that's, the Pollinger's cat thing is related to, which is important, is related to taurine deficiency. Cats produce practically nothing. And that's really what it was. It wasn't the cooked meat or anything like that or whatever that people claim like that other nut. Is TMG worth taking? Nah, don't waste your money. If peptides are the interest, but look at be telling kilos eye drops. Yeah, some of these have shown some benefits. Some people have been using peptide therapies. I mean, I know that Paul does. One of my subscribers, I've used it with Dad and a few other things in that regard. So there seems to be some evidence that it helps. And why the hell not? Okay. Are you aware of the Ruby's coenzyme in plants? No. It's highly inefficient and produces a lot of reactive oxygen species. I wouldn't be surprised. Apparently, the reason that the plants have so much vitamin C and E. Yeah. And that's the thing. Sometimes the so-called hormesis is, and too much hormesis is not a good thing. So if you actually have more and more hormesis, I say I get more my hormesis from the sun and from exercise. I don't need to add more. More isn't necessarily better in that regard, but I wouldn't be surprised that and if you're actually extracting anything, but yeah, oh look, people are going to use all sorts of crazy things, um, and a plant enzyme is going to work very different in the human biology than a plant biology. So, yeah, I don't know what sort of thinking people have that you can put something from another organism into a completely different type of you know of organism category, from a plant to a mammal, and apparently you're going to get some benefit. Is weird, but people will sell anything if they can. They will sell anything, believe me. Yeah, I've noticed in the recent times on the interwebs that so many new products appearing, and a lot of them have very little to no research behind them, or stuff that is questionable. As I said, like earlier, the hydrogen water. No, do not recommend it. It actually adds more deuterium, one thing. And the other thing, it seems like this sort of excessive amount of um, hydrogen that ends up in maybe creating an imbalance. I'm not sure whether it is or not. I'm just claiming this is a sheer speculation on my side, that there's sort of an imbalance between sort of electrons and within the body, and the amount of hydrogen ions in relation to that, potentially. That's where people are getting headaches and getting all these other strange symptoms. Unclear the mechanisms, because nobody's researched the mechanisms, and don't expect the companies that are producing the stuff to do the research. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Eventually, 10 years' time, somebody's going to look into it and we'll probably know more what exactly Richard's going, is he? See you, Richard. And yeah, so at some point that will go down that way. But it's like anything, it's oops, I've clicked on the yeah. Anyway, clicked on the Shelley's. Anyway, we'll move on. JP, hi Harry. Taurine supplementation seems to be reducing my CVD symptoms, cardiovascular disease symptoms. Yep, thank you. Question: what exactly happens to cause the it was the related to the monkey thing, POX. Yeah. So there's always a reason. And I was basically, this was on the media. This is how crazy it is. And I was just reporting on the issue in regards to what certain conservative politicians were saying. It was on the public knowledge, and it was disinformation. I was a bad boy and I needed to be spanked. So that's why I got it for 3 months, and I was in the gulag. So yeah, it is what it is. Annoying, but what can you do? It just seems that they've pulled back quite a bit, got rid of the strikes, and also got rid of the warning that I had years and years ago. Because you have to get a warning before you get a strike. Both were removed completely. So yeah, very, very strange. But I would suspect the change in administration in the US had something to do with it that's made them a bit uncomfortable. As you've seen, even, Mark Zuckerberg has been coming forthright. Oh, it wasn't me. I was forced into it. Yes, Mr. Young Global Leader of the World Economic Forum. Yes, we know you were forced into it. Really? So, yeah, like a lot of these people are running scared at the moment and are being less forceful in their censorship. That's the only difference. Will it last beyond the 4 years? Maybe not. So I wouldn't hold my breath. This is a lull in a long-term project. If you go all the way back, Rockefellers and a whole lot of other entities that have been pushing these agendas, this sort of dystopian sort of future where they control everything and we will be happy. That's been put into place over a very long period of time. They just didn't have the technology back then to do it, or the brainwashed population. Now you've got education from primary school or from kindergarten, practically all the way into academia, where you're being brainwashed and conditioned to think in a certain way, all the way through. And as these generations change, they will get their perfect, socialist man and woman. So they're playing the long game. And unless we dismantle, sort of getting rid of the federal education is probably one good thing, but then pretty much going in and, if I was a leader in a country, I'd do two things. I'd change the entire curriculum, de-wokeify it, and the second thing is all the actual progressives that are in the education system, boot them out. Because if you don't have people with that sort of thinking, it's very hard to basically brainwash people, isn't it? When you've got free thinking, people that believe in the Constitution, the rule of law, the foundations of democracy, which is, free speech, of being able to hold your own opinion, and it's not disinformation, it's your opinion. Okay? So once you have a society that's proper in that way, yeah. But unfortunately, we do not live in such a sort of, yeah. Anyway, so that's the sort of reasoning behind the, strike Harry. Yeah, basically. Yes. So I'm free for the time being. I've actually put it conservatively. I've actually lowered it to conservative sort of. So when you actually select the thing, I've had to put it on the conservative, which means I get very little advertising and much less income from it. So, but yeah, but I don't control. You have to leave it to them where they insert it, and they don't insert it at the same time for everyone. As the comment says, they insert it at different times, so you can have conservative, moderate, or excessive, or the full blown. I just put it on the conservative, the lowest, and leave it at that. Because the other ones, I don't know. The other ones say in the mid part and this part that they will determine, and it's just, yeah. So I just basically go for the conservative one, and I ignore the other one because some people may get more ads, others may get less ads. It's sort of random sort of thing. And so I want to be fair on everyone. So if you're going to get ads, you get the bare minimum, everyone at a different time. So it's the conservative option that I've selected. So it is what it is. Still, this channel does need to generate a bit of revenue because it does pay for the Zoom, it does pay for some of the software and some of the other stuff that I purchase. And I'm with some of the new stuff, I'm already out of pocket. So you cannot complain since I'm still behind on getting back anything. It'll probably take another couple of years from YouTube before I realise some of that income change. Remember, I had to up my internet. I didn't need to, but I had to because I couldn't get enough upload. had no option because it was sort of jerky because there was not too much upload. I didn't need the download because I had enough. The problem was the upload speed had to be improved. So to go to a higher plan, that it means extra money that I had to fork out from my own pocket. So, and remember, I'm not selling products, guys. I've got a day job. I don't sell products. I don't do any of that. So any small amount that comes my way to cover my expenses for the year is, I believe, justified. Yes, yes, true, true, true. They do say you look wiser. I'm not really convinced about that idea. Oh, really? I can use another word, but it's illegal for me to use that word because I'm discriminating against a group of people if I use that word about. Anyway, what the hell causes grey hair, Harry? It can be a number of things. Obviously, there's the genetic component, but it also can be nutrient deficiencies. Nutrient deficiencies, not enough sulfur, not enough certain minerals and all that, vitamins and minerals can have an effect. I know some of the B vitamins, if they're depleted, can have an effect if you've got less biotin as well. So there's a number of things that actually deficiencies can cause greying of the hair. Stress is a big one as well, which we sometimes ignore. Taurine can lower cortisol and stress and stuff like that, so they can have a positive effect in that regard. Now, cortisol isn't the stress hormone. It's a hormone involved in stress, but it's involved in a whole lot of other things as well. Signaling about nutrients and stuff like that. That's not stress, that's signaling. It's a bit like insulin. Insulin can actually either signal in the fat cells, which is sort of a negative because it increases fat cell, but it can actually signal to the muscle skeletal. There is a benefit. So it's not a fat storage hormone, it's an anabolic hormone. So it depends on where it's being expressed, whether it's a problem or not. Okay? So that's the issue, where it's the same thing with cortisol. It tends to be the amplitude, how long, and in what way. So there are variations in that regard. So it's not a bad thing. And so it's not a good thing. It's just a hormone signaling in its own way and so merry way. So, yeah, so I would say the big one would be nutrition and genetics. Those would be the two main things. And most people, as they've come on a carnivore diet, if it's a nutritional deficiency, they usually see improvements over time, you know? So things get better in that regard. But if it's, you know, on the other hand, if it's, something like genetics, it's hard. It's like photo bleaching for me. It's a struggle. My sisters, even worse. My cousins, on mum's side, yeah, in their mid-30s as well. So it is what it is. You can't get away from that. So yeah, it sucks to be you. But if you look at tribal people, you don't see a lot of these things. But because they're consistent from birth to death on a species appropriate diet with just very few seasonal things here or there. The problem is most of us over multiple generations have been on very poor diets. And this is why we've expressed a number of rare genetic disorders and a lot of these sort of things. Alopecia, you don't see it in tribal people. You don't see a lot of these baldness, you don't see in tribal people. You don't see these things. It's quite clear that our diet has something to do, our lifestyle and diet have something to do with it. It's very clear in that regard. And also, over certain generations, if you continue doing that, you will turn on certain genes permanently. And it takes about 3 generations to turn them off. And that's, very important that people understand that difference. And so, there is no magic pill, is what I'm trying to say to people out there that are hoping. If the nutrition improves your hair state, this is why there's so many sites, so many products being sold. If there was a solution, it would have been solved by now. It's like if the science was settled on something, nobody would be arguing about it because it was settled. When science isn't settled, people argue because everybody has got an argument. They can point to something that's slightly different that contradicts the other side and say, look, you've missed this point. The other side says, no, you've missed this point. And they've both got some legitimate argument. It's a bit like the Vagoons and and the low carb people. The low carb people say, low carb actually makes things better. The Vagoons say, no, low fat makes things better. Compared to what? Compared to the sad diet? Yes. But one is nutrient deficiency, it won't last, you'll fall apart and all become carnivores. And the other thing is they're missing the Randall cycle. So once you understand the Randall cycle, then it makes sense why low fat, low carb have these effects compared to the standard diet. So it's, again, like all the stuff is nuancing and understanding and having a deeper understanding of what is at play. But in this case, it's those two, nutrition and genetics. You got genetics, no magic pill is going to fix it. If you go on a species approach diet in your ancestors, a couple of generations, yes, that will get sorted out, for sure. That should improve things over a number of generations, but you won't be the beneficiary of it. Your ancestors will. Sorry. That's the reality. Good to see you, Sydney. Before I go there, I need to go to there are a few. I'll go first to the bottom one. No offense, Andrew. Bully, thanks, mate. Yep, I'm back. I'm out of the gulag. I'm free at last. Well, for the next 4 years at least, while the Don is actually in the White House. But when he gets out, it could be a different story after that. They may come back with a vengeful, demeanour and really do some damage. So, especially if Klaus, their favourite important patron of the WEF, has anything to do with it, or that other reject Harari takes over. God help us. He's really crazy. Anyway, Andrew Dean, thanks, mate. Why do doctors drain blood if you have iron is too high for type 1? You're talking about iron overload in type 1 diabetes. Well, it's because free iron can actually increase oxidative stress and do damage to the endothelium and stuff like that. The problem isn't iron. The problem is it's unbound. So when I actually look at iron, I go, I don't care if ferritin is high because that's bound and safe. But if I see transferrin too much being and a lot of free iron, then I'm going, there's a problem here in that regard. Now, the thing that actually regulates the ions and puts them in the right place and makes sure that all the actual metalloproteins, they're the transporters that transport all the minerals and ions and stuff, including iron itself. Taurine plays a big role here. So if you're not on a species-appropriate diet, you do not produce enough taurine because you've got a problem with your pancreas. Remember, taurine is synthesized in pancreas. So type 1 diabetes people should be on taurine supplementation, period. Free form. not the bound stuff, not the bullshit stuff you get in the body bro supplements. None of that shit. We're talking about free form from either North America or Germany who have got good production facilities. Nowhere else. Okay? I don't trust any of the other ones in Asia or anywhere else. North America, US, Canada, Germany. That's it. And the US manufacturers are, I would say, slightly the best. So I usually get my sourced from the US in that regard. The islet cells, I've actually done a video. If you go and actually do taurine, and do the pancreas or type or diabetes or stuff like that, you'll actually find a video that I cover. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. You just have to Google it, where I cover about how you can restore the islet cells inside the pancreas with taurine. Obviously, if you're younger, like I've had ladies, mothers have come to me, their child has type 1 or the early stages of type 1, and we've sort of megadosed the child on taurine, and that's improved the insulin secretion and obviously the functioning of the pancreas as well. These are anecdotes. This is not experimental evidence of any sort. It is anecdotes. It is extrapolation from me, from animal research, where I saw that giving high doses of taurine to rats that had damaged pancreases and their islet cells deliberately destroyed were able to be restored within a number of years, which is equivalent to humans, 5-6 years. So you have to do it for quite some time in high doses. Now, for adults who have got far more damage, I haven't dealt with any adults, only young children. No adult has approached me. I think there's only one guy that knows Bart K that has come on my channel a couple of times, and is a type 1, and he's actually doing taurine supplementation, but I haven't spoken to him. That's all sort of I know in that regard. Loki.
Hello, Harry. Hello, everyone. Man, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Definitely been a while. Definitely.
It almost feels nostalgic at this point.
Yes, it does a bit. So, what are how are things at your end?
Oh, wow. Lots of work. But yeah, things are nice. I've been in a new job for 7 months.
Let me plug in so we don't get any noise feedback. Are you getting any noise feedback?
Not here. You should plug in.
Yeah, yeah, because my mic's just above here, and it may start creating a few issues for us in that regard, and for people that are listening. So
yes, exactly. Well, yeah. I guess lots of things has happened in the meantime, but yeah, I keep getting stronger. And I've noticed this year that I was waiting for spring, which was like a month ago, and I've been noticing here UVI 10, UVI 11, 12. I used to be able to get red still in my second year of carnivore. I'm no longer burning. I have to be very intentional. Like I have to be very purposeful. Like I want to get sunburned because otherwise it's impossible. But I was still able to sunburn easily last year, like somewhat easily. But now it's like it's so difficult. I think it takes a while, right? The half-life of PUFA in the body and stuff. And I'm only now seeing, I guess, the full benefit.
Yeah. And now you understand what I've been saying for a long time to people, that getting the PUFA out is a really big, and when you're younger, it's much easier. A person my age is much harder, because I've sustained far more damage and far more ingested that sort of shit, and it's in my system. So I'm still going to be, I can still get away with it. And you remember I did the experiment where I stayed out in the sun when it was really hot. In the southern hemisphere, we don't have as much ozone, so a lot of heat comes through compared to many other parts like the tropics, which got more ozone in comparison. Yes, you do get the UVs and all that, but we can actually get also UVC. a bit.
Yeah.
There's been a few cases, so that's even more dangerous. And we know that if we look at people down at the bottom of South America, like in places like in Argentina and Chile, there's a lot of blindness due to the high UVC, due to the lack of ozone. So a lot of people don't know that, but you're probably more aware because you live in that part of the world. What I did at the time, remember what I did? I was using a high quality cod liver retinol supplementation to basically reduce the amount to deal with that excess oxidative stress, but also the matrix metalloproteinases, the collagen degrading enzymes to regulate them.
Yes.
And in the that's many people forget that. I always and about that, but really the carnivore diet giving you the nutrition protects you, regulates properly those enzymes, so you don't get this sort of excessive. The problem when you've got PUFA from seed oils that has accumulated in that tissue, it creates a lot of this exacerbation. Now, obviously, it's moderated, so I will still get a bit red if I stay for a lot, like pinky, but you're not even getting that. And I know some others who are younger, they're not getting that either because they haven't been exposed to. They've got better quality, you could say, fats incorporated in their skin compared to me, even because of all the things that I did in the past. So we're not all, and that's I always try to remind people, we're not like the Maasai from birth to death, who are basically on a species appropriate diet and earthing themselves continuously,
Exactly.
24/7, 365. They are basically just sucking up those electrons and stabilizing their tissue from oxidative stress, even the minor amount. So they're in a far better state than we are. We just have to accept that that is a reality. We can't reverse our heritage of what's happened and all that, or our lifestyle. What we can do is reduce it and try and improve it. The younger you are, you're going to see better results. You go carnivore when you're young, in your 20s and 30s, you're going to see dramatic changes. In an older age where you've done a lot of damage, like me and many others, it's going to be much slower, the improvements and all that. Yes, I've seen improvements in my skin, I've seen improvements in a lot of things, but other people can claim even better. But that's because less damage. They're in a better state, they're younger, they can get more of the benefits. I'm jealous. Not really, I'm just being facetious, but yeah. So what's happening in Brazil with your new illustrious socialist leader?
Yeah, I mean,
Just be careful, remember the monitoring.
yeah, no, for sure, but yeah, this is the highest Brazilian real to dollar like rates I've ever seen in my life. Like I remember when I
Well,
was a kid, it was like,
socialists destroy the currency first of all.
yeah, no, it's abysmal. It's like I mean, I'm gonna keep my words somewhat clean, but you know, it's utter insanity, Harry. And they've been talking about internet regulation again and stuff. And I guess that they are like trying to hand out a few things to keep, most of the population somewhat happy, somewhat at bay. So you
Yeah,
see some kind of law project that is either trying to appeal to women or trying to appeal to a certain segment of the population. They're just
yeah.
it's that type of thing. And recently, like it's got people up in arms. It's a thing about
Mm.
abortion because I mean Brazil is one of the few countries where like it's you basically have no lawful abortion except for like cases of rape or things of the sort. But they recently have gotten a proposal of a law project that was going to end even that, so it's got people up in arms and stuff. And it seems that most of despite being a bit divisive, it seems that most people are in favor of that, but I find it funny because when they
You
were,
know what? You know what it's called? Years and years of brainwashing through the mass media.
Yeah, exactly.
Americanization of the media.
Exactly.
It's the same thing
So,
in Greece.
yeah.
Even though it's 95% Orthodox,
Mhm.
you have people very easy about these subject matters, even though, the priests are quite blatantly saying these are evil, these are wrong.
Exactly.
A lot of people have been conditioned by the mass media. Again, we've got an Americanized mass media in what I call probably the word Americanized. It's basically the globalist American elites.
Yes. Yes.
We have a globalized sort of a media that is basically imposing these sort of values on the population. And it's very hard when the education system and the media pushing these sort of that sort of thinking to push back against it. The older generation and the middle-aged generation are going to push back more than the
Yeah.
younger, and I suspect the same thing's happening in Brazil for exactly the same reason, because it's the younger that are more brainwashed through the system than the older.
And it's funny. I noticed the biggest difference moving here to São Paulo, because it's like people that were raised here and they live around it. It's like they have no sense of like typical
Morals?
Brazilian culture, morals. Everyone's like a caged rat, and everything they believe it's like media, or it's far more Americanized. So it's like the thing with race, for example, here in Brazil. A lot of people they even have any idea what the race they are. Like depending on context, someone could say I'm black. That's how like it
Yeah,
really
but
depends on the
in the
context.
rural area, it's like in Greece, in the rural areas, and that people don't care. Other
Yeah,
people, like some of my relatives are olive skinned.
yeah,
I'm lighter skinned. People don't care. They don't even worry about that.
uh-huh. Yeah,
This
but
is an urban problem.
exactly.
It's the same thing like in New York and California. Sao Paulo is basically the Brazilian version
Brazilian, you,
of New York or California.
yeah,
Same
exactly,
thing.
same thing.
It's these people, they're so-called progressives, they're the ones that seem to be so concerned about these sort of racial differences.
Exactly.
Things that you are born with, you can't do anything about.
No, and it's like
They seem to amplify the whole bullshit.
like you have people around here using BLM rhetoric, Brazilians.
I
Like,
know. It's happening in Greece as well. And in Australia as well. I'm going, it's a different country, different. What are you talking about? As I
oh,
said, this is the globalist narrative that's being pushed everywhere. And obviously, in urban centres, everywhere, it's being amplified because people in rural areas watch less TV. They're
yeah,
less involved. They're more involved in communities and stuff like that, as you know, even in Brazil, Greece, Southeast Asia, whatever. You go to cities, most people are more disconnected from other people. Urban. This is the whole reason for urbanisation. This is why they always talk about, like even in Greece, they use the word apokendrosi, which means de-urbanize, to try and push industry back into the regions, into other areas, to help them grow and to help them sustain their population. The reality is they're not doing anything of that. It's a deliberate move by the globalists globally to force people more into urban centres because it's easier to control populations in urban centres. But when you have more people in the regions, rurals, and all that, they have their own food, their own guns, their own, you know what I mean?
mhm,
It's much harder to control populations like that. You can control people much better in 15-minute cities, so to speak. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So this is the whole reason for it. It's, even in Saudi Arabia, they want
yes,
to muster all the population to this big, massive conglomerate, this long chain and things. Remember, they go to COP, they go to all these sort of different organisations, are part of that. Remember, Qataris and all that, they're all funding all this sort of stuff because, with the globalists, they've got this unholy alliance and they're, scratching each other's back. They're pushing the same, and it's all about control because they fear their own populations. They want to control them. It's It's that, and pushing people into cities. They can actually reduce their fertility with the diet. They can encourage people to reduce their population, let's say, with using abortive methods and the whole
Yeah.
lot. It's all part of the same agenda. It's anti-human, misanthropic, and the whole purpose is to basically reduce the unnecessary mouths, as Bill Gates would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Too many of us.
No, and it's the anti-life sentiment is just widespread. I don't think there's like 1% of people my age that is like that sees having kids as a good thing, or that doesn't actively hate, for example, motherhood or fatherhood. It's not that
Yep.
they are like neutral about it. They actively they are actively against
Yeah,
those
no.
things.
Yeah. It's that's why I'm against the sort of movement, men going their own way as well. I'll
Yeah, yeah,
criticise both
for
groups
sure.
because both are part of the same agenda.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same agenda: destroy families, destroy communities, and make people into the new socialist man and woman that doesn't need a family, doesn't need anything. This is not new. I mean, this is what Lenin and people around him, Trotsky, were pushing in 1917. And after the disasters that they had and Stalin took over, when Stalin had an opportunity after Lenin died, he basically went back, reinstated orthodoxy, reinstated a lot of these things because he realized that, the birth rates were collapsing, the society was going to hell. He needed to stabilize the society. So he was a conservative, what people would classify. If you were, the capitalist system and the communist system, he would be classified as a conservative within the sort of that system. Was against abortion, was against, all these things, which a conservative Christian would support as well. So, and that's why they hated him so much. Obviously, he did a lot of crimes, but that's the socialist end of his manifesto. Take out your opponents. Mao did the same thing. The National Socialists, the other socialists, because they are socialists as well. The difference is that both hate the Jews. One just wants to genocide them. The other one wants to basically, rehabilitate them. Yeah, exactly. That's the only difference between them. But they basically, Hitler set up a vampire state in Germany. There's actually a German economist who's written about it. It's sucking the life out of for the war machine
Yep.
of that society, and that's why, yeah, in the end he had to destroy the Reichstag, blame the communists, and then pretty much set up a dictatorship, which is what happened. But the other side, if they could do it, they would have done it as well. So they're not
Yeah.
any better. He just took them out before they took him out. That's the only difference. Let's not forget, he was a communist before he became a National Socialist. So they're all the same. They have the same thinking and all that. Marx hated even though he was Jewish, he hated the Jews because he believed they were money lenders and all that. Again, it comes from that old thinking about the Jews. So it goes all the way back to very ancient sort of thinking. So it's not
Yeah.
new in that regard. But it's a pathology that exists in the culture, and it manifests in certain ways in that regard. That doesn't mean necessarily the Jews are any better or worse than any other population.
Exactly.
There are bad Jews, there are good Jews, there are bad Greeks, there are good Greeks. I don't have this generalized thing, but there are different geopolitics that one group will be pursuing against another, and we all need to talk about these things and be quite open about it in that regard. But these groups have always had these sentiments. And people say, well, oh, wasn't Hitler a racist? No. And people say, what are you saying, Harry? He wasn't a racist. He was a national chauvinist. There's a difference. He hated a specific group for specific ideological reasons, which is a very different thing, because in the SS, there were honorary Germans, as I will call, who were Jews. A close friend of Hitler was a Jew and an SS officer, and was married to a niece of Himmler, who was the head of the SS. One of his nieces married this Jew, SS. Okay? The doctor that looked after his mother, he was a good friend of the family. He was looked after. He was a Jew from Austria. So there were honorary and there were good and bad Jews, as even the communists talk about good and bad Jews, money lenders and the ones who are ideologically in line with them. So you have to understand these movements, how they think. Owen, the guy that was, the Olympic athlete, the American, he said when he was in Germany, he said, I felt no racism. And people criticised him, but he didn't. Because remember, in the SS, there were German African Nazi forces in the Wehrmacht. There were also Indian ones, because they were opposed to the colonial sort of rule of India, and many others. People don't realise this. The Nazis believe in super race. Well, when they mean superhuman, coming from sort of Nietzschean Schopenhauer type thinking to some extent, what they're talking about here is those who are the most vicious, ruthless, and determined will be the ones to survive and be supreme. So he believes in a number of racial groups. You can have those, and the ones that are not like that, they're not worthy of living. So it's very much this: if you're an alpha, you're fine. If you're a beta, you need to be eliminated. If you're to use modern language in a sense, the sort of thinking, the Uberman, the Superman. So you have to understand the ideology. And this is why it had, for extremist elements in different countries, had an epiphany. That's why they're united with him. So it wasn't a clearly racial, Germany and only Germany. He actually hated even the Germans he considered weak Germans. At the end of the war, he blamed that the weak Germans were the ones, the degenerate Germans, that needed to be punished. And he actually ordered the destruction of Germany, but it wasn't carried out. But, so this is the ideology. You have to understand the ideology, not what people say, what they think. Even fascism is completely different. I mean, Mussolini had a Jewish girlfriend and he protected the Jews. It was only after he was overthrown by the Germans that many of them were sent to the concentration camps. You've got to know the history. This is why Franco and Mussolini weren't the same as Hitler. He was a socialist. A national socialist, not an internationalist socialist. But he still believed in the sort of the global movement of that. So he was a globalist, but in another way. The other ones were basically true nationalists, these fascists and fascism basically means, the state and capital becoming one and working together. It's a very different than the sort of system that Hitler set up, which was a vampire economy, which has nothing to do with, today what we have is, to some extent, state capital, sort of a fascist state. It's just draped in democracy, because it's not a free market. It's, these monopolies and these characters that have got a lot of wealth and control over the politicians that have integrated the state with their interests and getting all the benefits, like an oligarchy. Oligarchy is really sort of a fascist state, in a sense, in that regard. So people need to understand the definitions, where National Socialism and socialist communism or socialist Marxism, all that, are very similar in some regards, very different in other regards, but they come from the same source, from the old socialist Fabian and old socialist, the utopian socialist, and all the utopian communists of the past. Unless you've read the history, I've been part of those movements in the past when I was a teenager. I read all the original texts, and that's why I know it. I didn't read what some opinion somebody had on those. I actually read Das Kapital. I actually read Lenin's Empirical Criticism on Kant, which is a thick book, that big, all about philosophical dribble and a lot of comments that he puts on the side. It took ages to read that one, and it was very convoluted. But anyway, that's for another day. So I know these characters really well because I was reading philosophy at the age of 15. So I'm well aware of the thinking behind these people that most people are not aware of, and there's your difference. But these movements unite in different ways over time because they've got common interests of some sort or another. Today, you've got pretty much the globalists, you've got the sort of neo-fascists, you've got the sort of reformed Nazis, as I call them, like Klaus Schwab and people like that. These sort of people that have sort of come together who view this sort of globalist utopian dream as the uber society, the super society that must be imposed on the rest of us. So the ideology has morphed, in a sense, over time to a very dangerous type of ideology because it's a soft authoritarianism that people are not realizing is happening in small increments. They are much wiser now in the way. They are eroding freedom, not limiting freedom all of a sudden. They're eroding it in small amounts and conditioning the youth. For Mummy Earth, you need to be in a 15-minute city. For Mummy Earth, you need to do this, that. These are compliant people. They're compliantly asking, begging for chains. Put my chains on, please. Give me Jabba the Hutt as my pet thing. These are people who are compliant. You talk to them and interact with them. You can see the compliance and the, how much they are committed to it. And they will tell you they are freely committed. They truly are because they've been brainwashed. The conditioning is just, Goebbels, would have basically been giving them awards for excellence in terms of propaganda because they've done a much better job than he could have actually ever done in the past. So, yeah, that is the society we're living in. So we've got a lot of struggle. How can we fight against them? Rebuild communities and rebuild relationships outside social media, outside the bubble. And throw remarks. Don't try and change people's opinion because, like food, diet, and ideology, you can't change that, or religion, or whatever. What you do is you throw out there the contradictions. Let them mill it through their head. Most people, when they're not emotionally in an emotional state, and they've heard something, they will start. It starts gnawing at them, and they go, "Oh, that seems a bit strange." They may look into it and then find something else that's contradicting their narrative, their belief system. They'll look even further, and before you know, they've already realised that God, they've been sold a whole lot of bullshit. Put the seed of doubt. That's the most effective weapon we can have. Build communities and put the seed of doubt in certain types of thinking, show the contradictions, and let them work it out. Because most people, the majority of people within the average can, and that's what we say about that. We've got a saying in Australia, it doesn't pass the pub test. Most people go, there's something wrong here. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong with this picture. Throw a bit of extra doubt, get them thinking a bit, and they may come up with, even if they don't come up with a perfect solution, that they've pulled away from the general narrative being pushed by the globalists. That's better than nothing because that means at least they're not as controlled anymore. And when you have a population that's not as controlled anymore, it's much harder to push this sort of nonsense on them. So what are you seeing? What are you seeing in sort of like the Brazil sort of, are there any movements that are emerging on the horizon?
So, more or less, Harry, I've been seeing a lot of stuff on the, believe it or not, on the educational and informational side. There's a lot of alternate media cropping up. That's something I wouldn't have expected a few years ago. But there's like a bunch of people that they're like making, everything from like bedtime stories for kids to like alternate news coverage,
Okay.
or they're teaching history from another lens, not the stuff that I was
Right.
taught. Yeah, it's like very, very interesting. It's being spearheaded by a few people actually. They're like
Mm.
headquartered here in Sao Paulo, and I've actually got to meet some of them, and it's impressive work. It's like fair. There's like
Okay, great.
even some like cinema. They're doing like some movies and stuff, retelling of old tales and things of the sort. It's I find it like very interesting because there are some like brain worms, or some type of narratives that
What's their English like?
I don't know if I think that they do a lot of stuff. They have decent English. They do. I think most of the stuff they create actually is subtitled in English, and some
Okay.
of their major productions actually have might even be dubbed in English as well.
Well, send me some links because I've got the other channel now, the opinions one and all that, and I wouldn't mind
Oh yeah,
sort of posting some of their stuff, and even put it in, if you've got them there immediately, just put it in the chat because it'll be sort of useful to get some of these things around for people. There are similar things happening in other countries as well, which is a good thing. Just people need to sort of put your feelers
yeah,
out and identify these groups, get in contact with them, try and actually, push it around to your friends,
yeah.
your
So
your family. Look, I found this site. This is interesting. You know, as I
right,
said, subtle people, subtle
so yes,
things. Rome wasn't built in a day. Subtle. Don't go too hard. If you go too hard, you lose people. People get all defensive. Subtle, little subtle things. It's like, a book that's got a bit of a religious sort of character to it, and you give it to a child to read as a present. You don't say
exactly,
anything. Mum's the
exactly,
word. Just give it. Let the book do the talking. Use
precisely here.
subtleness. They manipulated us in a subtle way. We have to break the programming in a subtle way. Remember that. Be smart about it. Don't be cocky. Arrogance and pride are the downfall, remember, and the biggest sins according to our faith. So
Yep,
don't be prideful. Be smart and tactful. We don't hate these people. We love
exactly.
them, and that's why we care for them. We want to save them from going into darkness. Remember that. This isn't a war against the people. It's a war against the ideology, guys. Remember that. Don't make it personal. It's against this evil ideology. That's what we're fighting against. Anyway, we have to go back to a few questions because this isn't one of those sort of other things. Is there a way of to regenerate brown fat? Fat pads on the face. Majority is depleted by one's 30s. Look, eating a species appropriate diet should improve those things, generally speaking, in that regard. Brown adipose tissue, on the other hand, when we're looking at that, it's like, cold plunges will help increase that. Um, things like exercise will help that. Uh, wearing less clothes in cold weather increases brown adipose tissue. These sort of things will have an increase. Also, taurine does as well. So I've shown that in a video that it will do that. It will actually increase brain adipose tissue as well. So these are the sort of things you can do. The problem is if it's for a family member, that's always going to be hard. Probably the easiest one then, they're not going to do the cold plunges. They're not going to do the exercise out in the cold weather or any of this sort of stuff. Probably the only thing they will take, because it's easy, is basically taurine, and that's it. That's all you've really got. G'day, Bruce. Very great to see you. Should we be concerned about parasites from pork? No, just cook it properly and you won't have any problems. Because you never can guarantee the source, is the whole reason. If I know of a good source, like I will have smoked bacon raw, but I know the source. So not an issue. But if I don't know the source, I'll cook it. So I enjoy rib sauce. Bacon, yes, certainly. Maybe take on an antiparasitic like ivermectin. Well, you could. I mean, let's just not try and cause the parasite infection.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
mean,
need. Yeah, there's no need. Remember, we started cooking a very long time ago, and it was to extract more nutrients. So and to be able to eat more because you can digest more when it's cooked
exactly.
because it's partially denatured, broken down. The stomach will denature everything and break it down all down to simple amino acids, fatty acids, and so forth. But that ionize the ions in the appropriate way in the stomach acid pool. So that's what we need to sort of focus on. We don't need to. And if you've got sufficient good stomach acid, usually even if there is some parasites, they usually get killed in that sort of environment. So it depends. It's also can be a problem if you don't have good stomach acid. Then I'd be very careful what I put in my mouth in that regard. You aware of this supplementing?
It's Lugol's iodine. I think that's what he's
Yeah.
referring to. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Have you used it yourself?
so not yet. I've been seeing a lot of mixed takes on it. I mean, it's not needed per se, but it can be dangerous.
I think so as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of my opinion as well. I've never tried it. I'll be honest. I've never taken any supplement of that sort or any iodine supplement for that sort either.
I'd
Um,
say, you know, I've seen the stuff, a lot of Dave D, Dr. Brownstein's stuff on the
yeah,
halogen
yeah, I've
content.
heard of him. Yeah,
Yeah, he says to take
I think
cofactors as well, but
yeah, you have to because selenium is really important. Otherwise, it becomes
exactly.
really toxic in that regard. So you know, but at, if somebody's got like severe halogens, let's say you worked in a factory
Yeah,
where there were a lot of exposure to a lot of chemicals, as an example. That's not the general population. We're talking about a minority of people that have been exposed to a lot of halogens. And then I could justify a protocol, an iodine protocol with selenium. But the majority of people do not have that level of exposure. So I don't think
yeah.
it's logical,
And I've
personally.
I've been seeing a few carnivores talking about having like 1 or 2 drops of 5% daily, and that's like okay. Most people that may not harm them, but a few people it's probably going to be really bad for them. So just don't do that
Yeah,
unless you have a really good reason for it.
true. Yeah, exactly. Well, any people that you've come across with this sort of condition?
Heteroplasmy. This is
It has to do with DNA
yeah.
and sort of sort of the mitochondrial stuff.
Okay, I don't know actually of people that I'm aware that they have that. I've seen Jack Cruz talking about it a fair bit actually, stuff that light interferes with it, but yeah, I just don't
What
know
was
much
that?
about it here. That light actually interferes a lot with heteroplasmy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Look, I've yeah, that's through cytochrome C. The sort of like Bart, I'm sort of on the. I think food has more of an
yeah,
importance than light. I'm not against light. I use light therapy with Dad and stuff like that. I've used it in the past, but I'm not convinced. Um, I think if you're on a species-appropriate diet, things usually tend to sort themselves out, unless there's some genetic reason. And there is some anecdotes that certain types of B vitamins can be important in this area as cofactors for some of the enzymatic pathways. Riboflavin being an important one, and to a lesser extent thiamine, but also some of the other B vitamins. So it's less of an issue if you're on a species appropriate diet. It's probably more of an issue if you're not on a species appropriate diet.
Because I was thinking, if this is about like mitochondria having, like, you have competing genomes and stuff, there's probably a degree that if your cellular cleanup is like mitigated, it's not working as it should, that's something that probably exacerbates heteroplasmic sodium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, and it is it is considered a mitochondrial disease, and there are variations in the sort of severity, and sort of there's also some anecdotes that it's slightly higher in some centenarians, and there's no research, so I can't. And this is where I find the contradictory research in this sort of area. You find one group of people say, well, it's very high in the centenarians, so it must be a benefit as well. And then you've got other people say, no, it's all downside. They've probably got some certain genes that are helping them mitigate that problem. Others say it probably gives a bit more robustness to the mitochondria. Others say it gives less. There are a lot of arguments back and forward. We don't have research which is done over how can I put it? When you do research with rats, you can do over a whole lifetime. We can't do that with humans. But even in the rats, the research, because you can't replicate centenarianism in rats. So there's a lot of issues with that side as well. There's a lot of speculative research, let's put it that way, and a lot of people are making arguments, and Jack Kruse likes to use convoluted the terminology in order to mask those speculative positions that he's taking. I'll be blunt. That's why I wanted to actually debate him on Bart's channel, remember? And Bart wouldn't let me on. Anyway, and he won't debate anyone anyway. Because the thing is, I know the arguments. I'd lay them out in plain English so other people can understand what he's saying, because I don't like that he's using convoluted language deliberately. And I'm not saying he's a very smart man, and a lot of the stuff that he's saying is correct, but he's also speculating on a lot of other things, and he's overemphasizing the importance of other things and downplaying other things. So that annoys me on a number of levels. If you don't know something, you're not 100% about something, just say, I don't know. I've got an opinion. This is my opinion on that, but I don't know because I've got nothing to really back me up other than speculation. So, yeah, I'm dubious at best. I think if you're on a species-appropriate diet, we look at tribal people that are on species-appropriate diets, Maasai, the Inuit, all these populations. We don't see these problematic conditions in terms of mitochondrial disease. And so I will go to first principle. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're doing a species-appropriate diet, things should normalise over time. Other things take a bit longer, but usually normalise. But I think the element there that's really important is that it doesn't seem to be causing problems to the centenarians. So is it the big problem? It's a bit like LDLC, very high, much higher than the average person in the centenarians. The Framingham study showed after 30 years, the people with the highest level of LDLC and total cholesterol 93% were still alive. The ones with the lowest, only 73% were alive. A 20% difference between the two groups in terms of all-cause mortality. That's significant. That's a drop. What is it? Compared to the two groups. I don't like doing this because really you have to look at the groups separately. That's proper science, because you would say there's 93 from 100. That's a 7% reduction. You know what I mean? And the other one, is sort of a 27% reduction in a sense. But we'll just do this sort of, which is a sort of generalised relative difference between the two. Oops. Oops. Which would mean there is a 21.5% increase in mortality with people with lower LDL-C and total cholesterol. That's based on the Framingham study, which is on the general community, people that are sad, dieting or whatever, just the whole community, Framingham, that have been looked. Some may be eating a whole lot of different diets, but the whole community, they actually found the ones with the highest had the lowest mortality after 30 years. Simple as that. So I argue from that point of view. Yeah, I've never used have you used the arachidonic acid supplements?
None whatsoever. I just eat piggy.
They actually increase pain.
Yeah.
They have a healing effect.
But
a lot of bodybuilders use them. But they do increase pain. You have to have a good pain threshold for them.
Yeah. And actually, this is something. It's like the acute inflammation, because I still see some people pushing this nonsense that, okay, like maybe you will eat something that has less, like you try to have a diet that has less omega-6, and they'll say, oh, my pains got better and stuff. And it's like, okay, but you understand that you need acute inflammation to heal. So, like, you're not even sure if it was simply that maybe you got rid of something that you were reacting to, or there was some kind of contamination in the whatever, but let's assume that you're actually improving things by so eating less omega-6, but you're also lowering your ability to heal. And I understand that sometimes
true.
It's useful, because if you have a lot of things, you just can't deal with that, so. But it's not necessarily, oh, I stopped eating pig and my pains are gone, so pig is bad for me. No.
Yep, true. Done. Yes. Hi, NTL. Yes, out of the gulag, mate. Out of the gulag, the YouTube gulag. Harry, is a blood test marker reliable to predict cancer? Which methods do you think is effective in predicting cancer? I can't give you advice on that because I'm not a doctor. So you would have, there are different methods out there. I'd go and ask a doctor about the different methods. Obviously, it depends on the cancer type. There are biopsies, there are blood tests, there are basically certain scans that people do. So they'll put traces, certain glucose traces in and stuff like that. So areas that are light up means there's active cancer, because they take up glucose much faster, those cells. So, and there are some that take up glutamate much faster as well. So they'll use these different depending on the cancer type. So they will do a number of panels, so blood tests, scans and stuff like that, where they're looking at specific types of markers, which there are a number of markers, in order to determine the type of cancer. They have to then send it to the lab to test it, to see what markers, what likely is, and then once they see lighted up areas, they'll go in and investigate. They may or may not do a biopsy. If it's metastatic, they'll do a biopsy because they don't care. It's not going to spread. But in some situations, like if you've got kidney cancer, they'll avoid doing a biopsy. They'll say you may, or a prostate, though, you probably will die with it rather than from it. They'll just monitor to see its growth. And remember, when it comes to the prostate, cell proliferation is determined by vitamin vitamin D, and vitamin and retinol. So, which is the second cofactor in the enzymes that run the proliferation. If they're not properly regulated, then you get more proliferation. So if your vitamin D status is good, like I've got DADS up to 183, so it's within the 175 to 200 mark, which basically puts him in that zone to be really safe. And his kidney cancer is sort of reduced, and he's obviously with his more meat and eating that. Oh yeah, that's right. Meat's going to drive it up, isn't it? Leucine and all that. What a load of bullshit. He's now atrophy has been reversed, and his kidneys are functioning better, and his blood pressure has come down as well. I don't need to use a whole lot of things to regulate his blood pressure, which the doctor was getting concerned. So yes, so that's been sorted out as well. So really, when it comes to, you have to go and see a medical specialist to basically do a number of tests. And depending on the markers that they detect, they will then determine what other tests are needed, because that will give them some idea of what potential type, because not all cancers are the same. Yeah, we call it lump it together, as you know, even benign cancers are sort of growth, unusual, out of control growth. In many benign cancers, if you basically tumors, as they're called, benign tumors, if you basically get on to getting your vitamin D really high and regulating the enzymes, the proliferation is abated and things start normalizing that tissue and start falling back into normal ranges, and that tissue starts cleaning up. Also, taurine can break a lot of that fibrotic tissue that's generated from this unusual growth as well. And that can help accelerate the cleanup as well, let alone it's got apoptotic effects. There is an issue with taurine in high doses under specific circumstance, has to do with Jabba the Hutt and all that. I will make a video and just cagey about how to make it and all that. It seems that our dear friend Spiky is interfering with certain immune functions. That means that taurine is actually working in favour of cancer if you've done this. If you've done this, okay? And you've got your immune system is in the toilet. Not if it's slightly down. Remember, Dad did this, and his cancer didn't go into a turbo, did it? No, even though he was still taking taurine, because I was doing a whole lot of other things. So keep that in mind. But it is a concern that is only being shown in rat studies. It may not be applicable to humans. I don't know. But it's recent research that I've come across when I was in the Gulag. They gave me a bit of additional material to read. So, yeah, it is a concern, but it's only if people have done this, and then they have to do the other protocol, which is... Hold on, let me find it. Give me a second. Facebook. So I've actually put on my Facebook channel. I got it. Okay. share my screen. That beautiful child in the middle. That beautiful, beautiful child in the middle. Guess who that is?
No way, that's you. Oh,
You
I can see the resemblance.
can see the resemblance. You can actually see the
Yeah.
receding hairline there. I had it from a child.
Oh my.
It's you know what they call this sort of thing. I actually got somebody said, "Oh, you got a receding hair?" No, I've had it from a child. It's
Yeah.
sort of a lick. My mother used to call it a cow licked you.
Cow lick. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
Harry, I thought the
mother,
carnivore made
mother,
you go bald. Why are you not bald?
yeah, exactly. So that's my older sister, Theodora. And that's my youngest sister, Susie. I'm the middle child between two mean sisters. That's why I had to become very diplomatic. Or use the
Very
baseball, or
nice.
use the cricket bat on my younger sister, which I did once. Accidentally, according to me. Mum didn't buy it, neither did Dad. And I got an absolute belt. I got a whacking. It was very painful, let's put it that way. Dad went a bit excessively with the belt.
Oh my.
And there's the protocol in that regard.
Interesting.
So bromelain nattokinase, curcumin. And I would take obviously curcumin, has the issue of, but it seems to block the receptors together with bromelain. Also, bromelain is an enzyme that breaks down some of this sort of stuff. So it's nattokinase. If you're on meds that interact with nattokinase, you have to use lubricase, because lubricase is what I used with Dad because he was on a blood thinner at the time. And nattokinase does interact with a lot of drugs. It's cheaper, but it's problematic. And lubricase does the same thing. So I will unshare that and I'll drop that because I think it's figure 3 in the study. I think it's figure 3 from memory. Figure 3. I think it's figure 3. So pull that out. I'll just bring it over here because we read it better. Click. Come on. Ugh. My spam thing is actually assessing the link. It's fine. Continue.
I was going to say, Harry.
Okay, so I can get rid of that. Got my thing. So there it is for people that need it. So I think it's figure 3 where it's actually showing it. So yeah, look, it's really hard to do these videos because of the censorship stuff and get this information out to people and all that.
I was going to ask you because I have people around me that are having some weird symptoms ever since they took things, so.
Yes. And look, I've noticed a lot of other people have got a whole lot of strange, either forget about the ones just dropping dead from myocarditis and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of people getting really some strange symptoms, some strange insomnia symptoms or gut issues. So that's because of, remember there's been a recent, I forget her name, a doctor that she actually did some research and found out that bifidobacteria and lactobacillus annihilated, in particular bifidobacteria. Bifidobacteria is one of the main important bacteria that's actually involved in the immune system in your gut. So if you lose that, you really have derangers in the immune system as well, where you could actually then end up with autoimmune disease and a whole lot of other problems as a consequence. So really you have to use this protocol to remove the spike load. And I've done it on Dad now. We've actually, I've got him the pills we've gone through now. I can't remember exactly. We've gone through a number of pills. The total period that I've done with him is over 9 months. He's at the tail end. I got him another extra supplement. I want to push him all the way up to a year, just to be on the safe side. All this swelling has gone, all the clotting has gone out of his leg. It's all cleared up. The doctor said it all looks fine from the blood tests and all that. I'm just still wary and worried. I don't, not unless, as I said to Dad, we'll do those, and then once we have, then we'll basically look at doing a proper scan to see whether there are any micro particles still in your bloodstream anywhere, in the small sort of the vascular tree, in the small little arteries and veins and stuff like that. So that's in particular the arteries, but that's where we're sort of trying to focus and see. But yeah, he's still on the sort of the end of the protocol, getting closer, and the results seem to be going according to plan in that regard. So they usually say 6 to 12 months. I think people should do it to 12 months to be on the safe side, to eliminate the problem. And that's why I say to people, if they've got cancer and they've got this sort of condition, get off a lot of the other stuff. You don't need taurine. Use Physitin for that purpose, for senolytics and apoptosis and all that. Use that approach. And blue light to reduce, so you can get better melatonin, to amplify the effects, the senolytic effect of Physitin, because that's what it really is. More melatonin will amplify the effect of the senolytic Physitin to kill off damaged cells and cancer cells. I've done all the videos. You just have to Google my name and Physitin. You get the protocol information. We just use taurine at night to increase the level of melatonin in that regard. But if you got cancer, you've got to be very strict. And if you've done Jabba the Hutt, obviously you've got to be very strict. And you need to clean out this garbage before then you can use the benefits of taurine to strengthen and regulate your immune system to be able to fight off cancer together with vitamin D. So, yeah, I know it sucks to be you, but nobody forced you to basically stick that thing in your arm. You did it. So take responsibility. Oh, that's right. My feelings are hurt. I can't take responsibilities. Yes, that's how I feel as well. My feelings were hurt by my lovely dear friends at Google. Larry, I'm calling out to you, you god of Google. Sorry, and thank you for your kind sort of releasing me out into the world again for 4 years, I suspect. Thank you. Yes. So oops. Always put people's comments, which has gone off the
I was going to say
plenty of them.
a lot of people on the health Twitter space, all the petards and everyone, it seems to be everyone, they are talking about the alternative cancer treatments. Seems to be getting a lot of notoriety now. It's basically blends of antiparasitics. It feels very, I'm actually quite interested in that, especially because most of those are very safe and very cheap. And I'm like, how have I not heard of this before?
Yep. Yeah. Look, there are a lot of alternatives. At the fundamental end, still it is a mitochondrial problem due to deuterium. That's the fundamental level, and a poor immune system that it can't actually fight off and kill off the, when you T cell this is why it usually happens in much older age traditionally, for that reason, because your T cells become senescent, aged, damaged over time. You've got less capacity to kill off those cells. In younger ages, it happens because of other derangements, that because of poor diet, the diet of the mother, has caused a lot of damage to the child as well. Maybe has a lot of, deuterium in there. You need some, even if the child is growth factor, but too much can be a problem as well for their mitochondria. But so you can have, from a much younger age, mitochondrial disease due to, these modern diseases of civilization that also cause these other problems. Yeah. Stefan, how do you improve lymph flow? You can jump up and down, Stefan. Jumping up and down actually increases lymph flow. Sitting like I'm doing right now, and Lukey's probably doesn't. But doing jumping jacks and stuff like that, I do them in the morning when I wake up to get the flow within the body. I had small surgery on the side of my knee. I wouldn't do jumping jacks. Let's put it that way. You've had something like that. And now it's always fills up with fluid under the scar, which I start to walk. It goes away again when I lie down. You need to speak to your doctor. There may be, for some reason, fluid is building up, which may not be a normal thing. It doesn't sound like a normal condition to me. It sounds like a post-operative issue that has emerged and possibly needs to be investigated in that regard. So I would look into it. I wouldn't neglect it at all, because it could be the consequence of something that may go later on. So, I wouldn't neglect it, but put it this way. And that doesn't seem like, if you've got fluid retention in a specific area in the body, there can be a lot of things. It could be low-grade bleeding. That's a danger if you've got low-grade bleeding inside your body. So investigate it, please, Stefan. Don't neglect it. Especially if you've done surgery and then you've got certain things that shouldn't be happening. That is a risk. Surgery is a risk factor, has risks associated with it. So I would be very careful about that. John, yes, I'm back. He's been released from the gulag. Yes. Yes, I was in the digital gulag. Now I've been released back into the digital realm to upset people, apparently. No, it wasn't any fun for me anyway, because I missed. But with the actual way that the system works, you've got to be very, very damn careful. What do you think of supplementing iodine for people that can't afford quality seafood? Well, look, there's plenty of iodine in dairy, in things like eggs. So you don't need necessarily seafood. Yes, seafood's a good source, but so are eggs, and so is dairy. Dairy is a very good source. So I don't think there is an issue there for getting it. And if you go and check some of I think I did a video ages ago, probably 3 years ago, whatever, that covered some of the sources and how much you need really, if you're healthy, that is. And you're not dealing with allergens. If you're dealing with excessive, and most people, I know people go, oh, I've got this furniture in my house, I've got this. Yeah, the exposure to gassing is going to be very little. And if you've got good detox capacity, you usually clear it out anyway. We're talking about people that have been heavily exposed. that are working in an industrial environment that have been heavily exposed to halogens, yes, they would need a protocol, or live close to a factory that's pumping out shit and potentially ingesting a lot of that things. They may have higher amounts. And they may then, under those circumstances, require some sort of protocol. And it should be supervised as well. It shouldn't be, people doing a backyard job at home without having sufficient knowledge of what they're doing. Either they do it with somebody who knows what they're doing, like Bart Kay or somebody like that, and you do it under some sort of, or some naturopath or whatever, some sort of supervision that you trust, that knows what the person's doing. But I wouldn't actually just, willy-nilly take, like a lot of people do, when it's unnecessary. We get more than enough in our diet. And if you're really concerned, do a hair mineral test just to validate if you're missing anything. It's really simple. And hair mineral tests are not very expensive anyway. You can do them for less than $100 in many places. You don't need to send overseas and all that. Just Google. I Googled. I found one that was up in Burnie company. They send it out through the mail. You do it and you send it back. I haven't done it, but somebody else needed it in the family. Why does L-reuteri not stay in the gut when stopping supplementation? Is that true? Depends on the strain. Because we're supposed to get some of these things from the food supply. The problem is, we pasteurize a lot of things, and we lose a lot of these things. We're supposed to get them in the food supply. Humans used to get some of this sort of stuff. And also, if you've got proper vitamin D status and proper other nutrients in the body to support these, a lot of people also do a number of other things like chronic fasting that can also reduce some of these strains, and then other strains that are more stronger can outcompete them and reduce the amount that's in the system. That can happen also. So I usually don't recommend chronic, periods to do. So yeah, all this sort of stuff. But there is Jabba the Hutt as well that we know reduces it. We know the actual C19 virus also reduces it. So if you're being exposed, you don't have sufficient taurine in your system, sufficient vitamin D status in the winter months, you may get more. That means it may get beyond your mucosal layers. At the mucosal layers, you're supposed to stop it. It's supposed to be knocked off by T lymphocytes, natural killer cells. But if that's not happening and it's getting further in, it's obviously going to, potentially compromise your, different parts, in particular, some bacterial strains in the lungs, beneficial ones, and some ones in the actual gut. That can be a problem. And there seems to be a bit variations between people for probably genetic reasons that we don't know because nobody's investigated it, because it's a censored subject matter. What do you do? G'day, mate. With you, 45 carnivore, unjabbed. Since I've got C19, seem to have some asthma issues, and I never had in my life thinking jelly like mucus during the night. I have no idea how to heal it, any idea. It seems that protocol that I've done for the Jabba the Hutt seems to help some people with, especially like some of the enzymes, like bromelain and stuff like that, seems to help a bit with some people in these sort of congestive things. It also seems that certain bacterial strain loss, as I said earlier, I was talking about earlier, those sort of bacterial strains loss is also an issue. there seems to also be an effect on some of the oral microbiome disruption that also has an effect as well. It varies between people, is what I'm trying to say, and can exacerbate some of these effects. Also, your immune system may not be as robust for some reason and may have been damaged to some extent. And that also means that it's not doing the clearance properly. The other thing is, we know that choline can actually help improve lung surfactant, which allows for mucus clearing and a lot of other things. And it can actually, when lung surfactant works better with choline, because it's one of the key elements of it, it tends to basically, for a lot of asthmatics, I usually, because sometimes they have an underlying genetic on choline, but only when these sort of things happen do they realize that they've got it. So usually it's so mild, people just think it's background noise. People don't consider it much. I've got something similar. I used to have touch asthma and bronchitis and all that. When I actually increased my choline intake, plus I've got an MTHFR issue, methylation issue, my choline intake, all that went away. All of it went away. So it seems to help some people. So it's a matter of experimenting, because I don't know your genetics or anything like that, playing around with some of this sort of stuff. I know taurine can help a bit, but some people can be sulfur sensitive. So I'd say give it a bit of a miss, or take very little. Like Bart takes, he still takes, but he takes very little. I know Pim takes more taurine, but it's because he's got sulfur sensitivity. Let alone it. Last time when he took too much, he farted out the whole house. Apparently, that's what Pim was saying. Told him no more. So she was upset with him. Yes. So these sort of things happen. Yeah, it sort of sucks to be you. There have been other people that have had this sort of condition as well. You're not the first person who have either done Jabba the Hutt or have had C19, and it actually had a more severe effect on them because it got into their system. It wasn't knocked out at the mucosal levels. Basically your nose, ears, anus, mouth. These are the mucosal layers where, and you've also got in your gut lining, you've got mucosal layers to protect things from going into your bloodstream. So all this sort of stuff, if it's those barriers are not working properly, there's immune dysfunction or whatever, for whatever reason, and these are compromised, these things can become slightly worse as a consequence. There also can be disruption in the gut microbiome, which means through the vagus nerve, you can get a movement into your brain as well of certain types of bacteria, which can create problems for some people. So people are getting strange symptoms, let me put it that way. And if things get into circulation in the bloodstream, they can get into the heart and lungs, and in the lungs they can create problems like yours. They also can, in the heart, create some disruption. I've heard people saying they get arrhythmias, stuff like that, and then you fix up the mucosal layers and it all goes away. They haven't changed anything in their diet, nothing. So there are a lot of wild symptoms out there, and the problem is nobody's researching because there's no money in it, and there's more money in pushing the stuff out and less research on this, what some people claim is a bioweapon. How dare they, as Greta would say? How dare they? But I would say that I'd try choline. Do not go over 3 grams. That creates problems. Stick to about 2 grams of choline. Eat a couple of eggs. And if you can tolerate eggs, you can tolerate taurine, and taurine can help. Get your vitamin D level up. You need to get it up into that zone which works against autoimmune type things. Like you did, Lukey, with your Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You got your vitamin D really high, carnivore diet, and you got rid of it, the thyroid issue. And then you're able to put muscle mass on, where before you were doing exercise and you're a little grunt. And now you've got big muscles, just like alcohol.
Right. I actually forgot her. Like I was talking to.
just like Uncle Harry. Yeah, yeah.
Oh god!
Check that out,
But I
mate.
was
58.
damn. That's
Uh,
that's good.
the
I've,
old boy still got
I'm
it.
actually surprised. I've actually made a few friends go carnivore the past year or so. That I've been hanging around the youth group and
Yep.
whatnot, and they've been asking me things. And I mean, it's been 3 years, so it's I can forget a few things. But I was looking back. I had such terrible hay fever, and it's gone now. Like I used to have to, I would go everywhere and I would have to. I needed the stupid antihistamine medicine around with me because if I started having this, it wouldn't stop. But now I haven't touched that medicine in like years, and I forgot about it. I used to live like that, but now I even
Well,
forgot that I had it.
remember taurine, the metabolite that deals with histamine, mast cell activation, it suppresses all that, and the interleukin 6 and a number of other pathways. And so it's quite clear that an animal-based diet will have more benefits. I used to get seasonal like allergies myself as well because I had touch asthma as a youngster. And I used to get seasonal allergies. Whenever I've had more animal foods in my diet, like when I was a youngster in Greece, and though my asthma went away, I was up in the village eating goat milk and drinking goat milk and eating goat cheese and taking the goats up from my Thea, Marihiro, that's mum's sister, and I used to go up in the mountains with the goats. I didn't stay for very long, but anyway, I did enjoy because I wanted to go down with my cousins and do a bit of hunting and other things. And I dumped my sister there; she wasn't very amused. But anyway, bad luck for her. Um, and the thing is, I noticed that my eating more animal foods, a lot of these things went away. The symptoms came back to Australia. And the more I got into a sad diet, I started noticing a bit of wheezing and things like that come back. That's all gone as well. Again, the more animal foods that I've consumed. So it's quite clear that diet definitely has something to do with it. And obviously, some people will have, like with baldness, having the genetics completely turned on and not epigenetically turned on, switched on or off, where some people can, because it's not pronounced in the family yet. But once it gets very pronounced and those genes are turned permanently on, then it's a different ballgame in that regard. But even there, I mean, like the Ashkenazi Jews, their condition, it's rare, the degenerative, disease that they have, and then you use high dose of phosphatidylserine and completely turn off the genes. So it does happen with some, even though at multiple generations, it seems that in some cases with some protocols it can. But unfortunately, we haven't investigated all the different things that can or cannot do that. So anyway, you asked a question. Is it true that raw fibre can detox excess estrogen? What can we do about it? Boron? Well, when it comes to two things, boron can actually, boron does is, well, you don't want to take it for too long, as I've talked about it, 12 for 1 week, 9 milligrams for that second, third, 6, and then down to 3, and 3 is equivalent to 2 avocados, as an example. And you can do that for up to 3 months. That should normalise the derangements in some of the your key sex hormones, in a sense, and it usually does settle some of that stuff down. On the other hand, if it's issues where you've got other underlying issues, you can't detox properly, whatever, and you're having reabsorption, stuff like that, due to these derangements that are happening, things are not functioning, proper gut microbiome disruption, whatever, then you can use what I put my younger sister on. She was having that problem on calcium deglutarate. Calcium deglutarate prevents certain bacteria that, if others are missing, proliferate. And when they proliferate, they're actually able to break down that foam that is actually created around the sort of the bile sort of conjugation that actually exists to take out some of the crap into through the colon into the toilet. It can break down and release some of those toxins and some of those also hormones back into the bloodstream through the colon. That's the reabsorption issue. What calcium D-glutarate is able to do is prevent that from happening. So I usually, it seems women have more gut dysbiosis than men. I usually find that I'm putting more women on calcium D-glutarate to sort that issue out. Fiber doesn't really do much at all. It's bullshit. In regard, what it may do is, because it creates like a film around the actual the your digestive tract, sort of a film, it actually reduces some of the reabsorption, but it doesn't eliminate it. So it's not fixing the problem, it's sort of masking the problem, reducing it slightly. But at the same time, it's also because fiber has a lot of, especially if it's coming from, if it's not like a supplement, but it's coming from actual eating plants with fiber, they come with oxalates, and they come also with these little hooks that can tear into and make tears and damage. And the more excess damage, you end up with things like diverticulitis and things like that. That is my opinion based on research that is in animals. We don't have any human research, but I would say that since the digestive tracts, the sort of structure is very similar. It may not be the same in morphology, but very similar, the gut. I would say that it probably is not a good thing for us as well, as we see the amount of diverticulitis amongst vegans and vegetarians much higher than the general community. So I say there is a correlation, but as I said, we don't have lifetime research, so that's all I've got. But I would say it's not a good idea at all. Isn't being 60 plus hormesis enough? What do you think, Luki? Somebody thinks that old age is hormesis in itself.
I mean, if you're not retired. But yeah, those are different things. Look, I actually think that if you're gonna try anything hormetic at that age, probably lower doses. Lower doses of
Yeah,
whatever it is. Gotta be
exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't overdo it. Type 1 reversed by stem cell therapy, I hear. Yeah. Stem cell therapy can improve that. Taurine is another thing. Taurine also can actually produce new stem cells in the brain directly, not in peripheral tissue, but in the brain, yes. So taurine can actually create. It's the reason why mummy's milk or human milk has got the highest amount of taurine of any milk. For that simple reason, because bigger brains that we have, you need to flood the system with taurine to enhance the growth of brain cells. It is involved in growing new brain cells. So that's another reason why I consider it an important thing for older people, especially if they're on a SAD diet, because if you give them with every meal you give them a small dose, like 1 or 2 grams, as long as they're not on any meds. You've got to check my meds things because there are interactions that lowers blood sugar and lowers blood pressure. It's a natural calcium channel blocker, just an osmolite, and we don't want to put people at risk. So you start very low dosage, and then they adjust their meds and get off them. So they're not using metformin or things like calcium channel blockers and other certain blood pressure meds. It's like diuretics. It's less of a problem, taurine, but anything that is regulating, in particular, the channel, the ions, in a sense, in the body, in terms of blood pressure meds, they are more problematic because they're doing in a blunt way something that taurine does in a natural way in much better regulation. But you can't take people off these things really quickly because you get side effects. So you have to start low and then reduce the medication, get them off the medication as you increase. And most people can tolerate 6 grams a day, so 2 grams with every meal, which will lower their blood sugar as well. So even if they're eating, because most of our friends and relatives do not eat carnivore, at least they'll get some benefit there, less oxidative stress, and some benefit for their brains if they're older. And also because it binds to mTOR in both muscle and bone, but in particular bone, it amplifies protein synthesis from a lower threshold. Together, it works together with leucine. So that's always, I've said, give elderly leucine supplement together with taurine to amplify protein synthesis in the elderly. It's the reason why my dad was hit by a vehicle last year, knocked by four-wheel drive about 3 meters as he was walking across the street, and he's nearly 90. He will be in January. And back then he was nearly 89 when it happened, and pretty much didn't even have forget about a broken bone, not even a fracture. They thought he had a fracture. They put his arm in a sling, and then they realised when they checked it, it was just the arthritic sort of stuff. They misread it and took him out of it. But even though 6 days later, quite a bit of atrophy had happened to his arm, I was shocked. So, yes. But just think of it. He didn't suffer nearly 89 at the time. Most vegans in their 20s would have shattered into multiple pieces because they've got poor bone and muscle. Andrew, g'day, mate. So I flew through until I get a Q. I need the famous Q. Where's your Q? Are there any carnivores or healthy alternatives you know of for my party celebration time drugs like alcohol? You gotta love CB Genesis. Anyway, I could actually tell you, go and check my live stream. So he'd be there for months going through all my live streams to try and find where I said exactly what I'm going to say right now. I'll be nice to you. But I would appreciate if you do go and check some of my content. It's fairly good. That's my personal opinion, but anyway, some people think it's pretty good. Okay, so when we drink alcohol, first of all, it's a poison, a very bad poison, not good for our bodies. Anyway, I've done it myself, and I'll be doing it on Tuesday when I'll be having a bit of a get together with the guys from work as our end of year celebration together before pre-Christmas. But the thing is, how to mitigate it. I usually take. They have to be methylated B vitamins. Obviously, when you're going to be eating there, you're going to be eating more animal foods, I hope. So you should get a number of the amino acids because you need for detox pathways, you need both a number of micronutrients plus, a number of amino acids that are important, So for the detox pathways to work. So our diet is ideal in that regard. So you need to get methylated, not the bullshit. So things like there's got methyl cobalamin, methylfolate that are methylated types. And you remember the one that I talk about, what is it called? The garden, whatever it's called. There's a specific brand that's got certain nutraceuticals in it and a whole lot of other things. Because you will need those different. It has a number of things. So I think it even has a bit of this one and stuff like that. Because you're actually doing damage to your liver by having alcohol. So you're not taking it every day, obviously, because you're getting it from the diet. But I usually recommend 2 of those B complexes before going out and drinking, and 2 after when you get home and then go to bed, and get a bit of hydration when you get back. Not a lot, but a bit. The B vitamins are the important thing because you're actually detoxing and you'll exhaust B vitamins as you're detoxing. Now, the other thing is choline. Choline can be very useful. Like a gram is probably all you need. I usually say to people, take a gram before, a gram after. Usually a gram before is all you need of choline, or have a few eggs. She'll get a bit of choline because it exports fat out of the liver. So it's important, and you will be producing a whole lot of fat in the liver due to alcohol. So it's important to have that because otherwise more of that and cholesterol will be forced through the bile, and it actually disrupts proper bile synthesis as well. So you get the excess that is produced and tries to get excreted. Anyway, if you're on a carnivore diet, it shouldn't be a big problem, but it's a question of reducing some of the actual oxidative stress in the liver. So that's when you're using, and also, because I don't know your methylation status, but if you've got methylation gene status issues, that could be an issue as well. The other thing is, if you do know that you've got methylation status issues, riboflavin is really important. For that, it corrects the enzyme completely. You check a 4 year ago when I first started close to when I first started the actual channel, there is a thing called methylation part 1, and it actually explains the riboflavin, how it corrects MTHFR. You do not need folate supplementation. You don't. It actually can deplete your B12 and choline also spares B12, B6, and folate. So if you're getting enough, you're not doing a lion's diet, you're actually doing a mixed, where it includes choline-rich foods and stuff like that, like eggs and things like that. You're usually pretty good to go. So, yes, enjoy your party. I will be on and carrying on Tuesday. We'll talk about it later. You bigots and critics out there, I know who you are. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, some of it is right. Your white blood cells, they can actually create a bleach, essentially, from chlorine, from iodine, localized.
Yeah, what they call, the peroxidize.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to reduce oxidative stress, again, like an animal-based diet is actually going to be better. Taurine can can actually lower sepsis in the bloodstream, which is one thing. And an animal-based diet in general can do it as well. Specifically, certain saturated fats can actually do it. That was a myth. Lipopolysaccharides, LPS, if you do a video, LPS, Harry, and all that, I talk about this. I show schooling, I think it's called Schooling Ian, that young bloke that actually came in and actually said nonsense. I explained how exactly it's the other way around. Saturated fats are not the ones that are actually driving sepsis. It's usually polyunsaturates from seed oils that are actually the bigger problem. And what they see with the saturates, they don't see that problem. And that was the highest order study within the meta-analysis, and all the meta-analysis studies that they put in there deliberately, or poor quality studies, you should not include in a meta-analysis anyway. So even the meta-analysis was done wrongly because they incorporated studies that were of poorer quality. And they themselves provided the information, exactly the rating of those studies, without me having to go away and actually do the checks to find out exactly what their rating was. They did it themselves in the meta-analysis. They exactly explained which studies and how poorly they were done or not. So, it wasn't me saying it; they were saying it. Just remember that, people. Unless you've got a deficiency in iodine, no. You know, Lukey didn't supplement iodine. He just did basically a carnivore diet and vitamin D and fixed up his Hashimoto's thyroiditis because it's an autoimmune. So
Yeah,
usually you need to regulate the immune system. Vitamin
and
D is critical
I
to
have to
be at a
say,
higher levels.
yeah,
And taurine is the other one that also has a regulatory effect. And so do the fat soluble vitamins, which have a role to play there as well.
exactly.
You know, so you get an animal based diet, some taurine, and good vitamin D levels, and most of these autoimmune things go away for most people, unless there are some other underlying issues as well. So, no, you don't.
Yeah,
This is like, treating everything like a nail that needs to be hammered approach, and
precisely.
can create a lot of side effects for a lot of people. Nina, go ahead.
No, and
You can tell the story.
it's not like I have a low iodine diet by any means, anyways, because I eat like half a kilo of fatty meat, half to 600 grams, for my lunch, and it's usually pork or red meat. So just that should, have almost the RDA or something like that. And on top of that, I eat like eight to nine eggs a day because I've been training a lot. I have dairy, I have yogurt, so I am getting a fair bit of iodine. But the thing is, I don't eat I don't eat with I never needed to eat with a focus on iodine. And interestingly, my cravings for seafood have gone way, way down. It seems that the only thing I want to eat nowadays it's pork, beef, and dairy, dairy and eggs. That's it. I don't feel like eating tuna or like white fish, sardines like I used to in the beginning. I still like those. I still have them from time to time, but in the beginning I used to like really crave things, especially prior to carnivore even. I used to crave tuna, crave sardines. That doesn't happen anymore. So
Me too.
yeah.
I've had the same experience. I used to be consuming a lot of seafood. I've noticed my seafood consumption has dropped quite a bit because I've got the nutrition now. I don't have the oxidative stress. I don't have the lifestyle that's actually damaging or, like sad diet and stuff like that. A lot of the issues have been resolved. So these things have come down. The nutritional requirement has also dropped. I mean, for non-carbohydrate metabolism, we need half the thiamine. So we don't need to supplement. We need half of it. Unless we're doing alcohol, that's a different thing altogether. And then we deplete it. But generally speaking, if you're on a carnivore diet, you don't. So you don't need it. And usually, as you said, I used to consume a bit more seafood, and I've noticed that was in the early days. Now I've noticed, and that's why even one of my first videos was on seafood about, mercury and all that sort of stuff, and now selenium or selenite, which is a sort of a modified version of selenium, that's produced in the body, and it also exists in the fish themselves, can actually bind and remove excess mercury. So if you've got the right ratio, certain fish are perfect. Doesn't matter. Um, mercury is not an issue. So, but anyway, people can Google that on selenium, mercury, and seafood, and my name, and they'll find that old video. And I go through and provide charts and all the ratios that I've actually done the calculations myself out the USDA data base that I pulled the information from. But yeah, I had a bigger sort of requirement, but that's gone down. Now it's more lamb and lamb, dairy, and pork that I'm consuming. Probably more lamb. I enjoy lamb. I like the smell of it, but that's me. It's an acquired taste, and it's pretty much very well competitively priced in Australia and New Zealand. So So, yeah, I wouldn't bother with that. I wouldn't bother with that as well, unless there's a reason why somebody needs it because they've got a severe deficiency or there is a health issue which may require it for a certain period of time. Um, yeah, can be useful. NAC. It also can, if you've got a lot of mucus. Yep, that's the other thing I forgot about. Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, uh, NAC can actually help with mucus as well. Forgot about that entirely. Thank you very much for reminding me. Dad had a bit of mucus as well, and I actually did give him some NAC, but you don't want to take too much. Just stick to 1 gram. Don't go too high. Can be problematic. Cruz talks about morning light, heat, cold, shock proteins, activation are the best bets. Probably with respect to centenarians, they are talking about related to, yeah, qualify proteins, yeah, but yeah, still that research is very murky because there are variations between centenarians that I've seen. I believe that there is very different pathways. It's not only dietary, lifestyle, and there's a lot of variability and genetics in centenarianism. I've got some centenarian genes, but I still had a heart condition from a poor diet when I was 44. And my great grandfather lived 107, and many of my relatives live over 100 on my father's side. Even on my mother's side, you know. My auntie, she's in her 80s, she's still around. Probably will get to 90 or 100. Um, you know, her brother, who was a smoker, a drinker, he lived up to 93, but, did a lot of, not as many as other people, you know, but he did have a number of addictions. He enjoyed a bit of gambling until my auntie stopped that completely. And he enjoyed things like drinking and smoking quite some time. She got him off the smokes, which took a long time, but she did eventually. I gave up because by that stage he was so old. Why give up? Probably going to die from something else than the smokes. But anyway, he did those sort of things. So I mean, I'm not convinced. I think diet is the big thing. I've got centenarian genes. I get cardiovascular disease and nearly die. I'm sitting on a bench halfway between my home and the CBD, and I'm basically having a heart attack. I nearly pass out. And they check the next day at the hospital, Royal Hobart Hospital. They find the markers of damage to the heart, that there was an infraction, but it wasn't severe enough to kill me. It could have. I just realised there was something wrong when I sat down. And sort of partially passed out, but not completely. So just letting you know. So I think diet is the most important thing, period. So the rest is just sort of bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, guys, it's getting close to 2 o'clock. I do have an appointment with my father. So that's lunch, having lunch with him and all that. The evening one I'll be able to run for a bit longer because I don't care. Um, I'm working from home, so it doesn't really matter. So I can't do a lot of flex. When I'm working from home, I'm restricted to half an hour. So it means I can't work too many hours. So it doesn't really matter. And sometimes I'll do 2-hour lunches because if I start early, I'll have 2-hour lunch and then I'll come back. It gives you an opportunity to walk up through the reserve and through a number of areas. So I do enjoy that in that regard. So, yeah. So if I haven't answered your question, either come back or leave it in the comments area. So stick it in the comments area and just ask me, and there'll be I'll get around to it. I usually get around to it. If I miss you, because sometimes that does happen. Shit happens. I do occasionally, and Lukey knows this, I will go back like a year or months later and go through old videos just to see whether there's any new comments. Just a quick browse through if I've got some free time to find stuff, and I will answer people. So, so the thing is, it may take longer sometimes, but you have to understand that there's only so many things you can do in a day, or so many things you can do at any time, and I'll dedicate some time on my emails currently. Please don't send me any emails. Just leave me a note, and if I tell you to email me, I'll tell you to email me. If I can explain in a comment, I will. I'm really behind on my emails, and I haven't even checked Rumble or my other channels elsewhere. I've neglected X as well to some extent. So if people are on X and have asked me questions, I probably haven't had a time to answer them. So I will get back to those as well to see what comments people have left for me to answer. I just can't cover everything. It's just with a day job, it's just too much. You've got to understand that. The other guys are doing it full time. They're doing full time. And I think Bart now is going to realise with a farm is going to be like a day job. He's not going to have as much time as he had. He's going to struggle. I can tell you. Both of them are going to struggle. They're not spring chickens and getting any younger. They're in my age bracket. They're slightly younger than me, but still, they're not that young that they're not going to. That's hard work, especially if you've been in a city, and he's been a city slick, an academic. He's never worked the land. So I think there's a big learning curve there, and I'm not sure whether he realises that working on a farm is hard yakka. That means hard work in Australian. In Aussie lingo, mate. Aussie lingo. So yeah, so pretty much that is going to be hard work, and he's going to definitely struggle a bit in that regard. So I would say, yeah, not going to be easy. Anyway, guys, I will end it there. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go right to the end. See if see your comments and all that sort of thing. Thanks, mate. And if thanks everyone for being here. I appreciate it. There will be the Eurasia in about 4 hours time from now. For those who are still awake by that stage, we'll have a slightly longer session because be 6 to probably not midnight because I do have to work the next day, but it may be a slightly longer, like 4+ hours potentially, because I've just got extra time. That's just the reality at night. In the daytime, if you've got other things to do, so I go around for the old man, and then I need to drop in somewhere else, and then after that, get back home to do the live stream, the evening one. So there's plenty of things to try and do between now and then in the next 4 hours. So run, Harry, pretty much. Thanks, everyone. All I can say is see yous.
Stay well, everyone.